Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we have a information-filled episode for you today on what is happening in Syria and the greater Middle East. So this is going to be one of the deep dives into geopolitics, and I know a lot of people have been asking for this kind of analysis. It seems like a very confusing situation with the rise of rebel factions in Syria and a lightning fast takeover of the country and deposing the tyrant Bashar al-Assad. Alhamdulillah. So everyone has been asking, what is my take on this? Today, we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to analyze and look at what has happened in the past, what's happening now, and what is going to be the near future, inshallah, if that's what Allah wills. So before we get into it, make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter. It's very critical for you to subscribe, put in your email. We're not going to spam it. We're not going to sell it. We are just going to use it to contact you with great information in the future, inshallah. If the channel, for example, gets taken down because we have Assadists working at YouTube, or you have, some sectarians working at YouTube and they shut the channel down because they don't like what I have to say, then we have to be able to contact you. And the best way for us to do that is through email. So include your email address and you'll subscribe to the newsletter, inshallah. You can find the link in the description below. Also, about 40% of you or more are not subscribed to the YouTube channel itself. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that way you'll get notifications whenever we have a live stream, whenever we have a debate on the channel, because it's not just Haqiqatjou. We have a lot of other content coming out, including Genius of Islam episode 4. So you want to be subscribed for that, inshallah. So let's talk about what has happened in Syria, because there is a lot of confusion, and there are all of these groups that are claiming that they are vindicated. And what has happened in Syria proves that they were right all along about the situation, and surprise, surprise, they think that Daniel is wrong, or Daniel has been proven wrong once again. But as we'll see, there's really not much to that claim. It's just empty fluff, outright lies, mischaracterizations, straw men. And we're going to look at that in detail, inshallah, and you can judge for yourself. You can judge for yourself who's been right all along and who's been wrong. I believe that I've been completely vindicated by everything that's gone on for the past week and a half. And we'll look at the evidence, and you can decide and you can judge. So if you have any comments, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to read the chat as we go along. If you want to prioritize your comment, you can put a super chat, and I will read as many of those as I can as well, as long as they're relevant. And we'll have a great show, inshallah. I'm looking forward to it. So when the news first came out that the Syrian rebel factions had left Idlib and had made this massive offensive against Aleppo, the timing was right after the ceasefire declared between Israel and Lebanon, which included Hezbollah. And people were noting the timing of this. Oh, the timing is something that is very suspicious. The rebels must be working with Israel. I don't think that was any indication. The timing, I don't think, was a clear-cut, definitive sign that, oh, these rebels are working with Israel. And I never claimed that. So if you look at what I posted, we'll just bring up the screen here. This is the initial post I had. I write this knowing full well that bots are going to flood the replies with the usual asinine tripe, but I'm writing this for all the genuine people who want my analysis. As I've consistently said for years, I hope Assad is captured and tried in an unbiased Islamic court for his crimes against the Syrian people. I hope that whoever ends up taking over in his place is a good, stable Muslim government that will be just to all in the country and will join a united bloc against Israel in the region. If recent history teaches us anything, however, there's not a high probability that this will happen. I hope I'm wrong. Removal of Assad will create a power vacuum that will be filled with many warring rebel factions backed by different countries, all vying for control and territory. This means a continuous civil war with potentially thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of innocent Muslims slaughtered in coming years. This is all great news for Israel. It's exactly how Israel has said it operates. When one side is on the verge of defeat, support them with money, weapons, and intelligence. Analysts were saying that the rebels were almost completely defeated and 2025 was going to be the end of the civil war completely. Then suddenly Netanyahu makes threats against Assad, and shortly later the rebels come out of nowhere with completely unexpected victories. We can speculate about whether the US and Israel aided these rebels, but it's just speculation. It was certainly in Israel's interest to do so and consistent with their previous actions. If the Syrian army is defeated, US and Israel will continue their policy in keeping with the Yinon plan by funding different Sunni factions to take power and cause as much chaos as possible. When one faction gets too strong, they will fund its enemies and so on forever, ensuring unceasing war and death for the Syrian people. If this happens in Syria, Hezbollah will lose its main supply line from Iran. This will make the next IDF incursion in southern Lebanon much more difficult to repel. Ultimately, Iran will lose a key component of its deterrent power against Israel. Theoretically, this shouldn't be the case because a Sunni Syrian leadership, we presume, would be anti-Israel and would understand the threat that Israel poses in advancing northward into Lebanese and Syrian territory. Foreshadowing here, because this post was written before the rebels were completely successful in deposing Assad. So this was before Israel actually took over the buffer, quote unquote, buffer zone, the expanding out of the Golan Heights, occupying and advancing towards Damascus, which we're going to see. I wrote this before that happened, and lo and behold, it happened exactly as I predicted. Sadly, history has proven how naive such presumptions turn out to be. It remains to be seen. For the sectarian tards who insist these events somehow prove that my position is wrong, how so? I have the same position today as before. Syria should avoid sectarian conflict and ally with Iran, Yemen, and Lebanon to form a united bloc against the biggest geopolitical threat to the Ummah, which is Israel. This position does not depend on who is controlling Aleppo, whether it's Shia, Sunni, or Kafir. What does matter is who is controlling whoever is controlling Aleppo. So far, that's yet to be seen. It is better to wait and see. There are some reports already that the HTS rebels, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, so that's the main group led by Jolani, who is the dominant faction. But there are many factions. Some say up to 25, 28 different factions. But the biggest factions, for those that don't know, is HTS, which we'll discuss their background in later in the show, inshallah. But you also have the SNA, which is backed by Turkey and basically controlled by Turkey, the Syrian National Army. And then you also have SDF, which is the Kurdish group that is they're secular Kurds and they're anti-Turkey. And that's the big concern for Turkey and Erdogan, is to neutralize that secular Kurdish force. But we'll see how all of these groups are related later in the show. But the main rebel faction is HTS, led by Jolani, for those of you who might not be following all the details. So there are some reports already that the rebels are trying to negotiate with Russia and are open to allying with them. I don't know if these reports are true, but I imagine that they were true. Would this be a betrayal of the Syrian people? Or is it a pragmatic step that any government has to make in order to restore stability against incessant hostility? Whichever group does end up taking control, they'll have to make strategic alliances with non-Muslims and non-Sunnis, which will of course vindicate my position, no matter how much the sectarian tarred, seethe, and cry hot tears. In the end, let's all make dua that there is peace in Syria, that if there is a transition of power, that it is bloodless, that the enemies of Islam do not benefit from these developments, and that no more innocent lives are lost, especially children. So, I mean, this is pretty clear. We have a situation now that has developed in the days after I wrote this post, where Assad has been deposed. He's had to flee the country. I wish that he had been caught so that he could be tried in an Islamic court and brought to justice for the crimes that he's committed against the Syrian people, the atrocities, the hundreds of thousands that he is directly responsible for slaughtering. And that would have been ideal for him to get caught. But anyway, he's been deposed and he has fled. And now the country has come into the control of HTS and Jolani. And what we see from some Muslims online is just this exuberance and celebration. And I completely understand that. And my post that I just read to you was taken as me trying to just rain on the parade or to defend Assad or to say, oh, this is terrible that Assad is gone. This is clearly not what I said. What I said is to be realistic, to understand the immediate threats, the immediate dangers that are going to come if whichever group comes into control doesn't address these big dangers and threats, which are what? Internal strife, civil war, infighting. That's really critical because the enemies of any kind of Sunni Islamist group, the enemies of that, which is the US and Israel, they're going to try to cause as much infighting and strife and civil war. And this goes along with the Yinon plan that we've discussed on many shows. So that is the big threat. The other threat that I mentioned in this post is Israel advancing. And we've seen that Israel is very keen to attack its neighbors and be very aggressive because of the genocide that they've committed against Palestinians, they've lost all their credibility as a rule-following nation. They're basically a rogue nation that's already been sanctioned by the UN or denounced by the UN with many resolutions against them. Their politicians have been convicted by the ICC, the International Criminal Court. They've been sanctioned, basically. All of these international courts with the UN have destroyed any kind of credibility or good standing that Israel has. So why not? Why not just go all out? Sure, we're going to invade southern Lebanon. And you have politicians like one of their economic ministers, Smotrich, saying explicitly that we want to invade Damascus. We want to take over Damascus, and this is part of our religious beliefs, and we want to kill off the occupants or the population, the non-Jewish population. That is what we want to do. That's what Smotrich, one of the highest officials in Israel, is explicitly has said on record. And then you have Ben-Gvir, another one of these ministers in Israel, close to Netanyahu, but from a different Israeli political party. He's part of the far right, saying that, yeah, we want to expand. So this is not a theoretical threat. This is something that they are explicitly planning. And now, since this post was published, this is exactly what Israel is doing. This is exactly what Israel is doing. So we're going to look at the details of this. But what I didn't understand is the reaction to my post that, Daniel, you are raining on our parade. This is a time to celebrate. We're so happy. Yeah, I'm happy too that Assad has been taken out of the country. I'm very happy about that. But I think a lot of these people that are just 100% behind HTS, and they're literally talking about HTS as being like, oh, HTS is now going to go and conquer Israel, and they're going to go and conquer Iraq and Iran and Hezbollah, and is HTS, like, so much confidence and so much trust in this group that we have very little information about. And there are unfortunately many signs that indicate that we should have questions. We have to have questions about what they're about based on their background. Not only their background, but what they're doing today, what they are doing today and in the past week. There are huge question marks, and maybe it gets to the level of actual red flags. So we're going to talk about that question. Should we trust HTS and Jolani? I don't understand. I think it must be like some kind of operation, like Twitter operation with bots that are being flooded, that no, we have to, anyone who doesn't trust Jolani 100% is an Assadist, is an Iranian agent, Iranian Madkhali, a secret Shi'i, a Majusi. Like, they're doing takfir. They're doing takfir if you don't, like, this random rebel group that has just, like, prior to 2 weeks ago, no one was talking about them. No one knew anything about them. Suddenly, if you don't get 100 fully percent on board and pledge allegiance with your hand on your heart, undying allegiance to al-Jolani, then you are Majusi. You are a kafir. Fire worshiper. That's how extreme it is. Like, does this make sense? Does this make sense? And the thing about geopolitics, and people wonder, like, how can you really be able to do geopolitics and understand these political events? They're just very confusing. And let me share with you 3 principles that will help you be able to do geopolitics. And geopolitics is not a science. It's a lot of prediction. It's a lot of uncertainty. There's the fog of war. You don't have all the information. But there are certain things that are important to keep in mind. One is always consistency. You have to be consistent. When you have a position that you take a position based on principles and then be consistent with those principles. That's number 1. Number 2, understand everyone's interests. What are the interests of the US, of Israel, of the Gulf states, of Iran, of Hezbollah, of Russia, China? What are the interests of all the powers involved? That's number 2. And number 3, you have to... Number 3, lost my train of thought. You have to understand everyone's interests. You have to be consistent. And I lost my train of thought. But I'll come to the number 3 in a second. So this is what I posted initially. I was immediately... number 3. Remember history. Remember recent history. I had a brain malfunction. Remember recent history. So the thing about the Middle East is we know the whole Syrian revolution came about because of the Arab Spring. And a lot of people, I feel, that are so enthusiastic about these rebels is that they weren't old enough to remember. Maybe some of them weren't even born, honestly, like, given the level of some of these Twitter commentators. They weren't even born in the Arab Spring in 2011. If you remember the Arab Spring, the excitement that we had for the regime change in Egypt, the protesters were able to depose Mubarak, Hosni Mubarak. In Tunisia, Ben Ali was deposed as well. You had this potential for Assad to be deposed. There were popular protests. There was way more enthusiasm. Like, you think now people are psyched about a Sunni revival? You don't have no clue in 2011 how much excitement there was. And then that excitement continued with Mohamed Morsi winning the election. by a small margin. There was so much excitement that this is a new age for the Middle East. And finally, we have gotten past the age of brutal tyrants and dictators. Then what happened? Like, compare the excitement at that time to the excitement now. The excitement then was 1,000 times more. Even the excitement with the Taliban 3 years ago, the excitement with the Taliban taking over and kicking out the US, that was even more excitement than now. But when it comes to the Arab Spring, we had so much excitement, 1,000 more excitement and optimism than people are having now. And then look how it turned out. Look how it turned out, how quickly the situation was turned against Sunnis, turned against the kind of independence from the US and Israel. And we'll discuss like how that happens, because those details are important, because the same exact playbook is now being used against the Syrian factions that have now taken power. So just noting that pattern, noting that history, that's a huge part of doing any kind of competent geopolitics. But asking those questions and doing that analysis and noticing patterns over time, over the decades, doesn't mean that you support Assad. Doesn't mean that you support his brutal regime. And I know that there are Assadists. I know that there are these trolls. So like a idiot like Jackson Hinkle, okay, who is just, I don't understand why. Like, is he literally being, like, I thought that he's being paid by Russia. But even Russia is not standing by Assad. Even Russia doesn't have that kind of position. So what is he talking about? Or like this Syrian girl, or some of these white nationalists that have been pro-Palestine or anti-Israel, and now they're like simping for Assad. Like, that's completely moronic as well. And I had like a tweet on this. Like, one side says, if you don't have 100% certainty that the rebels are rightly guided heroes that will bring an Islamic golden age to Syria, then you're an Assadist, Kafir, Iranian agent, Majusi, Murtad. The other side says, if you don't believe Assad is the chosen one who's single-handedly holding back Israel from wiping out the entire world, then you're an ISIS-loving Zionist who enjoys the sight of Palestinian babies suffering. Don't waste your time arguing with these morons. So both sides are insufferable. Both sides are just so ideological and so blinded by partisanship that you can't even have a conversation. They're just going to keep spamming. And I think a lot of them are literally just bots. Like, if you look at my replies, you see a very clear pattern. It's accounts that are anonymous accounts, obviously. And they have about 100 to 300 or 400 followers. And they all say the same thing. They all spam the same thing. Oh, you're an Assadist. Oh, you're this, you're that. So this is completely irrational. We can be anti-Assad and be happy that he's been deposed, while also being realistic and understanding the dangers and the threats that are imminently present in Syria, given the situation with the power vacuum that's been created. And the biggest enemies of Muslims and Sunnis in particular are taking pure advantage of the situation. And you have to be, and to say, if someone comes and ignores that reality and says, no, we have to focus on how you're an Assadist and how the Shia are the biggest threat. Someone who says that, that's a huge red flag. Like, I would think that maybe this is an agent. Like, maybe this is Unit 8200 out of Tel Aviv, or one of their influencer agents. Look at the reality. If you look at the Arab Spring, the danger of the Arab Spring is not only, by the way, a direct Like Israel didn't get directly involved necessarily in every single country, like in Tunisia or Egypt. They weren't directly involved. But there's many ways that Israel can influence and create chaos in accordance with the Yinon plan. They can fund terror groups to discredit Sunni Islamism. That's been their go-to. If you are a Sunni and you believe that there should be Islamic government, Israel and the US are going to label you a terrorist, and they're going to do everything to destroy you by sending these agent groups like ISIS and funding these radical terror groups and say, oh, well, look at this Sunni Islamist group, ISIS. Look how they're terrorists. Look how they're doing the most over-the-top atrocities. That's ISIS. All of Sunni Islamism is basically like ISIS. That's how they discredit any kind of Sunni Islamism. That's why for years they've been calling me an ISIS supporter, even though I've refuted ISIS, even though I have systematically refuted and shown that ISIS and Daesh are their understanding of Islam is completely deviant. And I was debunking ISIS as far back as 2015, and even up until recently, a couple of years ago, complete refutation of their nonsense and debated them. And they're complete heretics in their understanding of belief, the Quran and Sunnah and Islamic tradition. You can see the video on this channel. I forgot the exact title, but just search for it. You can see the refutation of ISIS. But that's how Israel discredits Sunni Islamism. They also discredit, other than funding these terror groups and backing them and sending them, and this is, by the way, known, has happened in Syria, and you had one of the Israeli ministers saying that, yeah, we treat these rebels, like this specific Qaeda rebel group, we treat them, Nusra Front, we treat them in Israeli hospitals. So that's completely on record. But we'll look at more details of that support. The point being that that's one of the main ways that Israel causes chaos. The other way is that they create economic hardship in order to discredit Sunni Islamist groups like Ikhwan. So if you look at Egypt, what happened in Egypt when Morsi took power and he won the election? You had all of these corrupt politicians who were sabotaging the country economically. They literally were turning off the electricity. They were shutting off the gas. You had all of this foreign investment leave Egypt. You had sanctions that were coming from Egypt. You had the Gulf countries specifically pull out all of their funding. Saudi and the UAE pulling out their funding out of Egypt. Why are they doing this? They want to create an economic crisis so that the population becomes dissatisfied and says, see, when we back Muslim government, Islamist Muslim government like the Ikhwan, like Mohammed Morsi, we suffer economically. We fall into poverty. The same exact thing happened in Gaza. When in 2006, the Palestinians elected a Hamas government, what did Israel do? They blockaded Gaza. They blockaded Gaza in order to cause a financial collapse. The whole purpose of this is to turn the population internally against the Hamas government. Same thing happening in Iran. Like, that's always been the U.S. policy in Iran, for Iran, rather than an all-out invasion. We should cause a color revolution by sanctioning Iran, causing poverty, causing economic hardship. Then there will be an internal revolution and hopefully civil war. That's their game plan. So HTS has to be very cognizant of this fact. Like these rebels who have taken power, they are also Islamist. They are Sunni Islamists. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think the playbook is all there? And anyone, if they don't take steps to block this kind of development, it's going to be a huge red flag. Like, well, maybe you're just incompetent, or you're compromised. And we're going to look at for the evidence for both of those possibilities. Okay, let's continue. So then I put out an article analyzing the situation. So any realistic geopolitical analysis of Syria must openly grapple with three obvious but widely denied facts. Without accepting these facts, no realistic solution to the conflict is possible. First fact, the necessity of forcefully removing Assad. So I talk about the atrocities, how this is an Alawi group that is dominating the Sunni majority, causing atrocities for decades, not only with Bashar, but his father, Hafiz al-Assad. This is something that has to stop. We have to get rid of Assad. And this is not a new position that I've had, by the way, as we'll see. So we cannot tolerate a Sunni majority being ruled over by these corrupt, murderous tyrants, these mobsters, basically. Second fact, Israel and the U.S. seek to foment sectarian war and eliminate Sunni and Shia Islamism. This is what I just discussed. And then the third fact, the future of Syria will largely be decided by outside powers. Syrians alone will not decide the future of their country, as they are too militarily and economically weak to establish any kind of independence. Rather, outside forces will play a dominant role in deciding the future. The ideal solution would be the following. Turkey, Iran, Russia, and China come to a deal. Turkey commits to expanding its power in the Middle East and backs a new Syrian government, which reflects the Sunni majority. Iran and Russia agree to this arrangement, abandon Assad, and force him from power. In return, the new Syrian government forms an alliance with Iran and Russia and Turkey, and they're given guarantees that they will not ally with the U.S. against them. Iran is also given a guarantee that it can continue to supply Lebanon, etc. So that's the main fact that we want to discuss. Okay, the future of Syria is contingent on who these the current rebel government, who they're going to ally with. That's the question. That's the million-dollar question. Who will they ally with? Because they themselves do not have the capabilities to sustain themselves. And anyone who claims that they do is just completely ignorant, and unrealistic. And people, as we'll see, who said, no, these mujahideen, they can stand on their own to feed and they don't need to ally with anyone. In fact, they're so amazing and strong that they're going to start launching offenses against Iraq and Lebanon and Iran. Like, this is how stupid these people are. And even HTS itself knows that it can't survive without making alliances. The only question is who? Who are they going to ally with? Is it going to be U.S. and Israel? Or is it going to be Russia, Iran, Turkey? And China, potentially. Those are the only two options. And we'll see that there are some bad indications of the direction that they're going. There are bad indications. There's nothing definite because it's still early. We can't, as I said in the initial post, we have to wait and see. But there are indications and signs that we can talk about, and we will, inshallah. All right, so I'm going to pause now before going on to the next section to look at your super chats. Thank you, Reptilian Lord. Weird name. Rania Awad has been invited to hold a talk on feminism at RIS in their youth program. You warned of feminism being normalized, and here we are. Yeah, Rania Awad, like complete fraud, complete, faux scholar, committing all kinds of fraudulent behavior, abusing the Muslim community. Go see the Haqiqat show on Rania Wad. And it's shocking that this feminist is still being invited to these platforms. It's a scandal, really. Daniel, so basically, even though the Muslims are being oppressed, we should not fight back because we are so weak right now, and unite because every resistant we do will be corrupted by America. Who said don't fight back? Who said the point of allying for Muslims to ally with each other and form a bloc is to oppose the Zionist aggression that is literally slaughtering our brothers and sisters as we speak, allying not only in the Middle East, allying in the subcontinent. We need allyship between Pakistan and Bangladesh. We need that allyship. Why? To counter the fascist Hindutva nationalist force that is lynching and slaughtering our Muslim brothers in India, oppressing them, destroying mosques and churches, by the way, and occupying Kashmir. We need, of course, we have to fight back against slaughter and genocide, and allying, Muslims allying. Sunnis, unfortunately, are not even allying with each other. Even the sectarianism is such a cancer that even among Sunnis, they'll say, no, I won't ally with a Pakistani. No, I won't ally with a Bengali. No, I won't ally with an Ash'ari. No, I won't ally with a Salafi or Ahl al-Hadith. Even the Sunnis, they are resistant to the concept of allying, let alone allying with Shia, 12er Shia, who are also Muslim. So without alliance, it's really a divide. Our enemies are doing divide and conquer operations on the Ummah, and some people are so stupid that they don't recognize it and they don't understand that they're falling right into the hands of the enemy. And they're, oh, you're defending kufr. You're defending kufr. What's your aqidah, bro? Like, shut up, you idiot. Shut up, you moron. Like, this is, and again, it's proven over and over again because these rebels, oh, the Sunni Mujahideen, they're already reaching out and trying to form all these alliances with other groups. And you have the sectarians, as we'll see. Anyway, I don't want to spoil the surprise. I don't want to spoil the surprise of what I'm going to show you, inshallah. I got emotional watching your last episode. I had to stop several times. May Allah have mercy on your mom. Give her the highest rank of Firdaus and reunite you there. Ameen. Daniel, we love you for the sake of Allah. We love you. May Allah keep beautifying your soul. Ameen. Jazakallah khair. That's really kind of you to say. See no evil. That's very generous of you as well. Let's see. TD, thank you. MashaAllah, I've been waiting for your take on this situation. Very happy to see you back, bro. MashaAllah, I've been waiting for your take on this situation. Very happy to see you back. Thank you. I'm happy to be back. Menasria Mira, thank you very much for your super chat. Oh, here's a good comment in the sense that it's criticizing me. Last word, appreciate it. I don't think of you as an Assadist, brother Dan. I just think on this specific issue, you are wrong. In long term, the more countries fall to Islamist governments, the more unstable the region becomes for Israel. In the long term, the more countries fall to Islamist governments. No, if those Islamist governments are bought by Israel, then is that an Islamist government? Like, that's my question. If the country, if the government is controlled or is basically under U.S. policy, which means being under Israel policy, then is it Islamist? Like, oh, we're Islamist because we, you know, have a Sharia court. But when Israel is genociding our brothers and sisters, we don't do anything or say anything. We don't oppose them because we don't want sanctions. We want to be. Is that an Islamist government? I don't think so. So what's the point of having a Middle East full of that kind of Islamism? Islamism that is rubber stamped and approved by Zionists, or if you have Islamist governments that are constantly under civil war, Islamist governments that are constantly infighting, how is that better for, or how is that worse for Israel? How is that unstable for Israel? Israel is going to be in a prime position to take more land and to completely ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. How? So I don't see how I'm wrong. I don't see really what is the argument there. Another from the chat. Dan, don't think the worst. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Best will come by establishing Islam. Yeah, so I don't know, what is your confidence that these rebels are going to establish Islam? That's my whole question. That's my whole question, because establishing Islam means that you're standing for Muslims against those who are killing Muslims, mass killing Muslims as we speak. What is your confidence that that's their intention? Because as we'll see, they haven't said anything. They haven't said anything against the US and Israel. That's a huge red flag. Okay. Let us continue. Okay. Let me pull us up. So you guys might remember that I had an entire debate on, are the Shia kuffar, and should we ally with Iran? Should Sunnis ally with Iran? It was a 1 versus 2 debate. You had two PhD Arab-speaking experts. And you saw, like, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. It was so embarrassing for them. And they've been coping nonstop. Nonstop coping. And I'm basically living in their head rent-free. And there isn't a single day that goes by without them tweeting about me. So they've dedicated themselves to my work. Alhamdulillah, it's good to have these kinds of fans. But look at how dishonest these people are. When I came out in my post and I said that we have to be realistic, we have to be cautious, we don't know who these rebels are. Great that Assad has been removed, but this is a very unstable situation and there are many threats and potential dangers ahead. These clowns immediately jump up and say, oh, Daniel has been proven wrong. Daniel, see, he's backtracking. Daniel is lying. He's doing taqiyya again. So this was their response. It's very predictable because it has you can't even understand what the argument is that they're making. It's just all nonsense. So you try to explain to me, like, what are they actually saying? So you have, here's the... Okay, so here is my post that I just read. The first fact, the necessity of forcefully removing Assad. So Mr. Potato Head, who has made takfir of me, constantly making takfir of me, even though, if you remember, in this debate, he would not defend the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he published his article on Middle East Eye, or one of these other publications, saying that marriage before 14 years old or 12 years old is legalized pedophilia. Legalized pedophilia, and it's disgusting and horrifying. So this is something that's allowed, actually, and legal according to Islam, and in many Muslim countries, Sunni Muslim countries, and Western countries historically. But this is legalized pedophilia. So I asked him, do you think that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha was legalized pedophilia? And he couldn't answer. he refused to say no. He just had to say no. Just, no, I don't think that. He refused to say no. Is that because you don't want to be discredited in all the Zionist news media that you get invited to? I mean, used to get invited to, no longer. He's a failed journalist. But he refused to defend. And then since then, he's just been coping. Anyway, so this is what he says. This is why he spent 1.5 hours in a debate with me defending Iran and its entire Shia terrorist network. This is rich coming from the person who was literally celebrating the worst massacres of ISIS back in 2016, 2015, as we showed in the debate. But he wants to call me a terrorist supporter. And the ongoing existence and strengthening of Nusayri Assad regime in Syria, only to now pivot and say this. In other words, he's now inching ever slowly to adopting my entire position because his reputation has been absolutely destroyed. And the only people who now tune into him are degenerates and Rawafid. Yeah, I'm sure. His cover has been blown. So this is what he says. Oh, I've just been supporting Assad. I just want Assad to get stronger. And now I shifted my position. I now conveniently, as the rebels were advancing at that time towards Damascus, I quickly, my favorite leader, Assad, is being deposed. I better quickly, let me try to secretly change my position and hope nobody notices. The necessity of forcefully removing Assad. I hope no one notices that I've made a complete 180-degree shift. I hope no one notices. But Mr. Potato Head is so sharp. He's on the ball. He recognized it immediately. This is so that I immediately point out that you're a shameless liar. Okay? I've consistently called for opposition to Assad, including in the very debate that you're talking about. Remember this slide in my opening statement? Remember this slide so you can go to the debate. Go right now, and it's at the 1 hour and 45-minute mark, and see what I say. Shia forces associated with Bashar al-Assad, Iran, and Hezbollah have inflicted terrible oppression and bloodshed on Syrian Sunnis. Therefore, all Muslims have an obligation to counter the Shia in Syria. Wow. That was in the debate, Mr. Potato Head. Did you just blank? Did you pass out when I was speaking on this slide conveniently? Like, did you have some kind of episode mentally? Like maybe you had a seizure and you didn't see this slide. It says it there in black and white, Talha. Sunni, all Muslims have an obligation to counter the Shia in Syria, and specifically mentioned Assad, calling out his crimes. Now, so first of all, you can't claim that I changed from pro-Assad to anti-Assad. That's a complete lie. But this was in the exact debate that you were in. So how did you prove, like, I'm inching closer to your position? I never had the position that Assad is great. We need to have Assad be the leader of Syria for all time. I never had that position. And it was there in black and white. So does this clown, this fool, does he actually retract and say, oh, my mistake? No, he's so dishonest that he doubles down. He doubles down. Like, look at the response. Yeah, takfir. Just he calls me Majus. Like, you can't take these trolls seriously. So here, you said we should resist, but not resist Assad, Iran, and Syria. What? Your muta-addled brain tried to adopt every position to avoid losing, but the reality is that you support Assad. Oh, the reality is, if you say explicitly, oppose the Shia in Syria, oppose Assad, Assad is a bloodthirsty dictator, kafir, if you say that, that means you're supporting Assad, according to this fool. Here you are opposing Syrians. Am I lying about you, or are you just a filthy Majusi Dajjal? Oh, okay, let's see this clip. What do I say in this clip that says support Assad? So notice how this clip is not even, he's completely moved away from the position of trying to defend or give evidence that I support Assad. He said, no, you oppose Syrians. So if I say anything critical of any Syrian, that means you support Assad, apparently. Let's see. What does this clip? This is from one of the Haqiqat shows. So we need to listen to this. Because they can't prove it. That's point number one. Syrians are against unity. Well, okay. Why are Syrians? Why is their... Wait, can everyone hear this? I always fall into this problem. Let me just confirm. If you can hear it, press 1 in the chat. Okay, great. Back to it. Perspective correct? Like, establish that if there are Syrians who view this, why is that correct? Syrians just want constant civil war. That's the correct position. They want constant civil war, even if that means that you will draw the entire region into a sectarian conflict that allows the Zionists to take over and dominate Muslims. Like, that's what you're basically supporting. That's what you're basically supporting. Oh, I've opposed Syrians. Notice how the entire thing was hypothetical. If there are Syrians who are saying that we need to not ally and not work together and just fight each other and ignore Israel, then they're wrong. Like, this is something that I disagree with. But it's a hypothetical. If Syrians are like that. I don't think Syrians are like that. I don't think Syrians are represented by morons and potential agents like Mr. Potato Head. Like, I actually think that the majority in Syria recognize the danger because they've experienced it of constant infighting and civil war and strife. I think especially what's going to happen very soon, and this is actually what is being signaled by HTS, is that they do want allyship. But anyway, the point is that this doesn't prove that you aren't lying about me and calling me an Assadist. Aren't you ashamed? Aren't you humiliated? You clown. Like, just call me Majusi another 1,000 times. Like, maybe people will be deceived by that. And then you have this guy as well saying, you're an Assadist, Iranian supremacist who grew up in California. Oh, really? I grew up in California. Might want to get your facts checked. I don't think this is news to me growing up in California, but you're an Assadist. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows. Just repeat it over and over. You're an Assadist. Everyone knows. You just love Assad. You love Iran. Everyone knows. Even though just above here in the debate that your boy got rocked in, it says Muslims should oppose Shia in Syria, including Assad, including Iran, including Hezbollah. Wow. No, but you're still an Assadist. Like, how can you argue with someone that just blatantly lies? So, okay, this debate was just from a month ago or a month and a half ago, but before that, Daniel was pro-Assad, right? Well, let's look at the history. Here's a tweet from 2015, basically when pretty much early on in having a Twitter account. The CIA tortures, police have black sites, NSA collects all communication, trifecta of efficient, effective governance, right, Assad? Right? Et al, meaning other tyrants. So torture, black sites, constant surveillance, oppression. Assad, right? Here's a Facebook post. Let me just center it. I am not biased against Saudi. This is from 2015. I'm not biased against Saudi. I dislike all Middle Eastern political regimes as they have all proven again and again that they only believe in one thing, maintaining their power at all costs. Bashar al-Assad is the extreme example of this. Wow. But other regimes have dabbled in the same repression when their injustices were challenged. When a person shows disproportionate favor towards one regime or favors one regime over another, or vice versa, or shows disproportionate contempt for a single country over others, oftentimes that person is motivated by one of three things: jingoism, meaning blind nationalism; sectarianism, Sunni versus Shia, Salafi versus Sufi, etc., ignorance of political realities. Any impartial observer can recognize the crimes committed by all these regimes and therefore, at the very least, remain silent instead of trumpeting love, support, and respect for criminals like a feckless twit. And obviously, corruption is not indigenous to the Middle East. A healthy disdain for politicians is just as advisable in the American and European context. Wow! If I didn't know better, I would have said, this is something I said just recently. But no, it's actually from almost 10 years ago, a decade ago. I've been saying the same thing for a decade or more. And calling out specifically Bashar al-Assad for his crimes and his injustice and his corruption. In 2015, that's before some of you knew even how to use the internet. Some of these bots on Twitter, some of these little kids, they have just learned how to use social media like 2 years ago because they're only 13 years old. I've been calling out these criminals for a very long time. And the idea, and pointing out sectarianism, long history of calling out sectarianism and the dangers of it. So I've been very consistent. Very consistent. Then on MuslimSkeptic, we have articles that are published. All Middle Eastern regimes are contemptible. Look at the date on this, 2017. Expand it so you can see. I have previously commented on the fact that all Middle Eastern regimes are contemptible due to the fact that they have all committed atrocities for the sake of power and wealth, but there are propagandists active on social media who want to argue that Iran is especially evil compared to Saudi because Iran supports Bashar al-Assad, who is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. I am not a supporter of the Iranian regime by any stretch of the imagination, but if we want to keep score, then let's not forget the role of Saudi, etc. And so I call exactly the same thing that I pointed out in the debate, with these clowns. Let's do the math. How many Sunnis have been killed according to sectarianism by other Sunnis, by other Sunni regimes, compared to how many have been killed by Iran and Assad? There's blood on all sides. There's blood on all sides. So just pointing out one country and one side, that is not helpful. And it seems to serve a political agenda. But the point is that I'm calling out Assad very clearly. Pro-Assad forces execute dozens of civilians and sweep through rebel-held Aleppo, says UN. Sharing, this is from when? 2016. Look at the date. Let's see. Then I had this video calling out Hamza Yusuf because Hamza Yusuf was attacking the Syrian people for resisting Assad and protesting against Assad. This clip, I'm the one who found it. Now everyone is spreading this clip, but this is from 2019, calling out Hamza Yusuf and putting my commentary. Look at this. Oh, hold on.
How's that revolution looking for you? Huh?
So I added these pictures with my amazing video editing skills. You know, I added these pictures just to mock what he's saying.
You know what the slogan of the Syrian revolution was? Who knows what the slogan was? Huh? شعب سوري ما بنذل. The Syrian people will not be humiliated. That was their slogan. They're all shouting it in the streets. Now, all these poor innocent people are begging non-Muslims to let them into their countries. They're fleeing across the ocean in boats. Allah can humiliate whomever He pleases. Man ahana sultan, ahanahu Allah. If you humiliate a ruler, God will humiliate you. That's a hadith in Tirmidhi.
Yeah, so he distorts the hadith.
If you humiliate a ruler, God will humiliate you. Why? Because the Prophet said, "Al-mu'minu la yudhillu nafsahu." The believer does not humiliate himself. Ahmed Zarruq said, when he attacks a ruler and he's not capable of doing it.
By the way, the last time I posted this video on YouTube, Hamza Yusuf's channel, or the associated channel that had posted the original clip, copyright claimed it. They got taken down. It only exists on Facebook. So I hope this video doesn't get copyright claimed by Hamza Yusuf and his murids.
In other words, they have power, you don't have power. If you attack them, you humiliate yourself. You have humiliated. You can blame the ruler all you want. The guy is a bad guy. I'm no fan of that man. I'm no fan of the rulers there. Saddam, I was no fan of Saddam. But now we see the wisdom of why these people were in those places. Because the Iraqis now, Muhammad al-Mahdi, who tore down that statue, was saying he wants to put the statue back up. Right? Zainab al-Kanzi, a Kurdish Iraqi, said, now I see the wisdom that God had in having that horrible man as our ruler. Because you take him away and you look what... Because we're not ready. We're not ready. We don't have civil society. We can't even wait in line for buses. And this is not because Muslims are inferior to...
We can't wait in line for buses, therefore we need Saddam. That's really brilliant.
Non-Muslims. It's not.
We're not
It's
inferior,
just
guys.
circumstances. We've been moribund for a long time. We've lost a lot of wisdoms that we
we've
had.
been at the brink of
we
death.
have terrible
We've lost
treatment of our women.
Terrible
we don't
treatment
raise
of
our
women.
children properly.
Don't
we
raise
have
children
horrible
properly.
school systems.
Horrible
we have
school
widespread
systems.
corruption.
Widespread
These are all
corruption.
the realities of the Muslim world. What did the Prophet say? وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. You're fluff. That's how he described
The
it.
only solution for these problems is we have to have Saddam and we have to have Bashar. That's the only solution. And we can't wait in line for buses. Can't wait in line for buses, so we should be happy to have these tyrants. We should be happy have tyrants that will literally slaughter hundreds of thousands. Like, how many Sunnis did Saddam murder? 100,000 at least. Some estimates say 50,000 to 100,000 Kurds. How many Shia Muslims did he slaughter? Over 100,000. Ethnically cleansed them, displaced millions. That's what we deserve. That's what we deserve, right? No one should be against these rulers.
So how do we change that situation? It's all there.
It's all there, and it's all there.
But no, this is just quietism. This is what the Sufis say. Just worry about yourself. Don't worry about anybody else. What does Allah say?
He didn't give us the solution. What is the
يا أيها
solution? Is
الذين
just
آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا Save yourselves. Because you can't save anybody else if you haven't saved yourself.
Yeah, so this is... Yeah, so I've been an Assadist, obviously, from as far back as 2015, 2019. Here's an article as well from MuslimSkeptic talking about Hamza Yusuf and his support are supporting and siding with tyrants halal in Islam, Hamza Yusuf. And then I point out, many brothers and sisters are hurt and disappointed by those who are critiquing Hamza Yusuf's comments in the video clip, but the problem with his statements are huge. He uses highly insensitive and hurtful words for Syrian victims of the brutal crimes of Assad. We can assume that he didn't intend his words to be deliberately mocking, but intention is one thing and actual effect and words and actions are another. He lays the blame for the situation of Syrians at the feet of Syrians who protested Assad. In reality, Assad and his puppet masters are solely responsible for the brutal crackdown of what were initially peaceful, non-violent protests in 2011. They are responsible for the destruction of Syria, not Syrians, and not even the Syrian opposition. And this is not to defend the actions of the opposition, though many prominent scholars have defended their armed resistance. See below. He uses hadith in a highly selective and imbalanced way to suggest that any opposition to rulers leads to Allah's punishment, and furthermore that opposition to rulers is tantamount to oppression of the self. He characterizes the rule of tyrants as wisdom, saying there is wisdom that there are tyrants like Saddam ruling with an iron fist. He ignores the undeniable historical and geopolitical reality that these tyrants have been installed over the Muslim world by Western powers to control and exploit the ummah. He says that Muslims don't deserve civil institutions, are better suited to be ruled over by tyrants like Saddam, and he cites Iraqis who supposedly wish Saddam had never been overthrown. Of course, he completely glosses over the fact that Saddam was overthrown by U.S. military invasion, not mass protest or revolution. So this is my record. Like, it's very consistent, right? I'm sure that you hear me on Haqiqatjou say these exact things. But this article is not from this month after the deposition of Assad. This is from 2019. 2019. Also, go to MuslimSkeptic. And I posted this video, the 11th anniversary of Syrian revolution, a brief look. And we talk about all the atrocities committed by Assad, about his jails, about the crimes of his father, about all of these Alawi crimes against Sunnis. Go watch this video. Posted when? This was posted in 2 years ago. So where have I changed my stance? Where was I an Assadist before? Still waiting for the proof. Here's another article. Putin and Assad, like father, like son. Peep the date. December 2021. Another article on MuslimSkeptic.com criticizing Assad. Okay, where am I pro-Assad ever? The tragedy of Syria and our struggle to remain conscious. Once again, look at the date. 2022. Okay. Cataloging the atrocities of Assad and urging Muslims, don't forget Assad. Don't forget his crimes. Look at what I say specifically about Assad. Bashar al-Assad is Alawi, which means he is not a Muslim. And I post, the articles about his background. Alawi is not Islam. They believe. Here, look at this tweet. So here is someone else. Like, this is the same circle with Potato Head and these Baathists or whatever kind of agent trash they are. The Syrian civil war was shaped by Israel and the U.S. This is the nail on the coffin. Now you will be forever referred to as an Assadist and a Khomeinist. I hope every Sunni sees you for who you truly are. May Allah deal with you and punish you severely. Oh, I'm an Assadist? Didn't you just see that I made takfir of Assad? and the long record of opposing Assad, but I'm an Assadist. That's a very strange Assadist to be. And I respond, is this just stupidity or dishonesty? Let me repeat what I've said many times. Assad is a kafir, secularist tyrant who deserves to burn in hell for the crimes he and his father inflicted on Muslims. That includes his culpability in the Syrian civil war. Syria deserves a better leader, and he should have been replaced long ago. But you're a shameful idiot for hiding the role of Israel and the U.S. in fomenting a civil war in Syria, as they did in Iraq and Lebanon, in keeping with the Yinon plan. And this has resulted in countless deaths. Why are idiots like yourself obsessed with defending Israel and the U.S. by concealing their role in the civil war? Why don't you acknowledge the Syrian blood on Israeli and U.S. hands? Why do you claim that haters and critics of Assad like myself are Assadists simply because we recognize the Israeli and U.S. crimes in Syria? In reality, a large portion of the social media accounts pushing this message are run by Israel and the U.S. They're just bots. Anyone who does not acknowledge the role of Israel and the U.S. in spilling Syrian blood is no friend of Syrians, but rather their enemy. So when is this from? Oh, October 5th, way before any of the recent events that have taken place. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times you denounce Assad, you point out his atrocities, you explicitly say that he needs to be taken out, explicitly say that he needs to be tried for his atrocities, explicitly say that he has murdered hundreds of thousands of Syrians. It doesn't matter how many times you say that, you post that, you dedicate videos to that. Mr. Potato Head, these Baathists and these agents will keep saying, you're an Assadist, you're an Assadist, you're an Iranian Madkhali, you're Majusi, you're crypto Shia, you're doing taqiyya, you're doing mut'ah. So these people just are so dishonest. And they should be discredited. And every time they post one of their lies, you all should be replying and saying that this is a lie. And you can say oh, I don't agree with Daniel on everything, but shouldn't you be honest? Shouldn't you not lie like this? Don't you think you lose all credibility by lying? I also made a point about the Madkhalis. Saleh al-Fawzan has explicitly refused to make takfir of Bashar al-Assad. Assad is an Alawi. Alawi believe that Ali, radiallahu anhu, the fourth caliph, was the physical manifestation of God. This is why they're not Muslim. Fawzan has instructed the masses to abstain from making takfir of Assad and other rulers. Madkhalis claim to be followers of Fawzan. Nevertheless, they constantly demand that I make takfir of Iran's rulers. It's interesting. These Madkhalis. I go further than the sheikh of the Madkhalis. I go further and I make it clear what I think of Assad publicly. Yet I'm the Assad. If I'm an Assadist, then what about Saleh al-Fawzan? He was asked explicitly. You can go and listen to this video. And he says specifically about Bashar al-Assad, don't make takfir of him. Don't make takfir of an Alawi? Okay, maybe there are some things that we don't know. Maybe he's secretly a Sunni, or maybe he was just born into Alawi family, but he doesn't actually believe in those beliefs. Maybe. And if that proves to be the case, then I will retract making takfir of him. But what is publicly known is that he's Alawi, and Alawi are not Muslims because they believe that Ali, a person, was the physical manifestation of God on earth. How are they different than Christians in Christian belief about Jesus? See? Constantly saying he's an Assad fanboy, citing a discredited hack to promote an idiotic conspiracy theory, but few such things have evident appeal for idiots. I'm an Assad fanboy for some reason. Don't know why or how, but it's been declared. So just keep repeating the same point. The Sunni Syrian rebels, when is this from? October 6th. So the Sunni Syrian rebels beheaded a Palestinian boy who they thought was fighting for Assad. I'm not trying to portray Assad as innocent. He is a murderous kafir tyrant. Oh, that's what all the Assadists say about Assad. When you're supporting Assad, you have to call him a kafir and call him a murderous tyrant. That's support for Assad. But the simplistic narrative that only his side committed unspeakable atrocities is factually wrong. And then they point out this tweet. Oh, look at Daniel. He posted this picture of Asad, and he cites a hadith. He who visits his brother in faith will remain engaged in picking the fresh fruits from the garden of Jannah till he returns. Oh, smoking gun. Daniel is supporting Asad. Look at him. Look at this tweet. Look at it from 2020. Oh, we found it. We found the proof, guys. Found it. Checkmate, Daniel. Checkmate. Oh, but look at this. Oh, you didn't scroll down? Just sharing a hadith, guys. Obviously, I don't support Bashar. Just sharing hadith. So there's a context to this tweet. Read the rest of the thread. Every good deed is charity. Verily, it is good deed to meet your brother with a cheerful face. Just sharing hadith, guys. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever does not show mercy to our young ones or acknowledge the rights of our elders is not one of us. I don't support Sisi, guys, just sharing hadith. So this was the whole context of this thread is that you had this guy, he deleted the tweet that he originally posted, Ismail Royer. So Ismail Royer is this guy that LARPs as a principled Muslim warrior. When in reality, he literally works for an institution that is Zionist and promotes secularism in the Muslim world, the Religious Freedom Institute. He's working, but online, people aren't aware that this is his day job, and he pretends like he's this Sunni warrior defending Islam. And so he posted a picture of Biden with his son, Hunter Biden. This was in 2020, leading up to the election, right before the election. And he posted a hadith about like the importance of the love of family or the love of your son. And I said, are you like supporting Biden? Like this clear enemy of Muslims? And at that time, it was really a big issue because they're pushing for Muslims to support Biden. I wonder how that turned out, by the way. I wonder how supporting Biden turned out to be a great help and a great support for Muslims, right? Right? So he posted a picture of Biden and Hunter, like Joe Biden hugging his son. And then he posted a hadith. So I said, like, this is nauseating and infuriating. Keep the Prophet ﷺ and his noble grandson out of it. It was a hadith about the Prophet ﷺ and Hussein and Hassan, I believe. And then people, oh, Daniel, why are you criticizing everyone? Daniel, what's wrong with posting a hadith and a picture? What's wrong with that? So I thought, okay, what's wrong with that? You have no problem with posting hadith and a picture? Okay, I can post hadith and pictures too. I can do that too. There's nothing wrong? Oh, okay. So I was mocking and trolling these Biden supporters like Ismail Royer, who, by the way, deleted his tweet. Oh, I wonder why he deleted his tweet. Quietly deleted his tweet, huh? So then the Madkhalis came out and they said, see, Daniel supports Asad. See, the smoking gun, we found it. He's an Asadist. He's doing taqiyya. And they conveniently ignore the rest of the thread. They conveniently ignore. Wow. Why didn't you Madkhalis point out these pictures, huh? Anyway. These people are dishonest. That's the thing that you have to keep in mind. I am consistent. Alhamdulillah. I'm honest. If I'm wrong, I say that I'm wrong. I don't double down like some moron like Mr. Potato Head or whatever. So, I mean, the record is there. The record is there for any honest person. But if you're a Muslim, you should, even if you don't like me, even if you disagree with me, you should stand for what is correct and what is just. Be just, even with your enemies. This is what Islam teaches. So even if you disagree with me, be just. And don't say that I'm an Asadist. Don't say I've been supporting Asad and I just turned 180 degrees and suddenly I'm anti-Assad because the rebels were advancing towards Damascus and they kicked out Assad. Assad had to flee. Don't say that I changed my position. I didn't change my position. I've been 100% consistent and 100% vindicated. Alhamdulillah. That's clear. So let us look at the super chat. This super chat is interesting. Wouldn't you agree that the proliferation of arms in Syria plus instability on the border of Israel with multiple groups that all hate Israel is bad for Israel? No. If they're fighting each other and killing each other, it's not bad for Israel. It's great for Israel. For example, Iran, post-revolution, and Saddam, both are enemies of Israel. Iran and Iraq, both are enemies of Israel in the 80s, but they're killing each other. They're in this massive decade-long war, and they're killing each other. Israel loves that. That's not bad for Israel. It's great for Israel. It means that you're too busy killing each other, so we can do whatever we want. We can expand as much as we want. So just by having groups that are hostile to Israel, that's not enough. The missing component is alliance. The missing component is alliance, and that is the consistent thing I have said since way back in 2015, a decade ago, and earlier. I only showed you part of the tweets or the posts that I've had on this topic. Alliance is the missing piece of the puzzle, and as long as you don't acknowledge that, you're going to ally with someone eventually. So people who are claiming that no, we can just stand on our own 2 feet. We don't need to ally with anyone. Like what these idiots said in the debate. Like what Potato Head said in the debate. We don't need to ally with anyone. They now have changed their tune. And we'll see that. Because the reality is you have to have an alliance. The question is, alliance with who? Remember, that was the $1 million question. Alliance with whom? And that's why this is their fundamental inconsistency, because my position has always been we need an alliance, but instead of an alliance with the US and Israel, we need to have an alliance with Muslim countries, including Iran, including Lebanon, including Yemen, including Tunisia, including Morocco, including Indonesia, including Malaysia, including Bangladesh, including Pakistan, including Afghanistan. That's my position. It's pan-Islamism. Go and watch that debate. Listen to my opening statement. That's all I want is pan-Islamism, Muslims uniting to form a political bloc. That's all I want. The people who say, no, we don't want alliance with anyone. We can't ally with Shia. What they're de facto claiming, and they're not explicit about this, is we have to ally with the US, which means allying with Israel, as I'll show you. All right. So let's talk more about Israel and what Israel has done for this situation. If you've noticed, much of the debate on Syria the past week has revolved around the question, what does Israel want? Thus, Assad supporters claim Israel backs the rebels, and rebel supporters claim Israel backs Assad. The logic here is sound. In determining what we as Muslims should support, it usually makes complete sense to identify what Israel wants and then desire the complete opposite. So what does Israel want? I hate to break it to you, but Israel's desired outcome is not one group in power. They're neither supporting nor opposing Assad. They're neither supporting nor opposing the rebels. They will at any given time support or oppose either side to manipulate the balances to ensure the fighting continues as long as possible. This is because what Israel wants is constant sectarian civil war. They want escalation. They want mass death. They want the US, Turkey, EU, Russia, UAE, Saudi, Iran to all get as entangled as possible. This is what Israel wants, plain and simple. So if Muslims actually want to support the opposite of Israel, what Israel wants, logically, they should support things like de-escalation, ceasefires, negotiations, diplomatic solutions, strategic alliances, instead of bitter sectarianism. These are the things that Israel hates more than anything else to happen in Syria and the Middle East as a whole, and they are actively working to subvert any efforts along those lines. This is posted from a week ago. So, and this is true, what we're seeing. Israel plays both sides. Here is the Jerusalem Post saying that Israel's interest is not in the victory of Sunni Islamists or Shia Islamists, rather Israel's interest in seeing them constantly fight and destroy one another, in keeping with the Yinon plan. The article states, who would Israel least like to see parked on its border with Syria? Iranian-backed Shia jihadist extremists or Turkish-backed Sunni jihadists? Since the answer is neither, Israel's approach to the developments in Syria will be to stay out of the melee as long as its security interests are not directly or immediately threatened. As Yitzhak Shamir once quoted as saying during the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, when two of the Jewish state's fiercest enemies were weakening each other, Israel can wish both sides success. In other words, kill each other. That is what Israel wants. So this is the article, the toppling of Assad's regime in Syria may be bad news for Israel. So people will point out, just read the headline and say, oh, see, Israel supports Assad. It's like, no, they support him as long as he's killing other Syrians and he doesn't have power. He's weakened because he's constantly fighting a civil war. And Israel doesn't support the rebels. They support only to the extent that they're causing chaos and strife. And this is clearly mentioned in the article. You can read it right here. The answer is neither. Israel supports neither. They just want to manipulate the balances. See, I'm right. I'm vindicated. I'm constantly being vindicated by what is happening. And the best that my opponents can do is lie and just say, you're an Assadist. That's the extent of their analysis. And by the way, as we'll see, none of these people are commenting on what Israel is doing to Syria as we speak, invading. Here's another example. Daniel Pipes, head of Middle East Forum and a leading Jewish figure in the Israeli lobby. He explains that U.S. and Israel strategy is not to have Assad or his opposition win. Rather, the aim is to keep them fighting and killing one another for as long as possible. Daniel Pipes, the case for backing Assad. The West should guide Syria's civil war to a prolonged stalemate by helping whichever side is losing. So if the rebels are losing, help them. If Assad is losing, help him. Manipulate the balances so you have a stalemate. That has always been the Zionist strategy. Now, what is Israel doing? Israel urges action to protect Syria's Kurds. So basically, they're backing the Kurdish, the secular Kurdish faction in northern Syria, the SDF, and they're making clear, the Israeli officials, that, oh, we have to support them against the Sunni rebels. What did I say would happen? What did I say? This is how Israel operates. Create constant civil war. They're already backing, and they have been backing the SDF. So, and this is what Washington supports as well. Washington is trying to play it both sides as well, as much as it can do whatever it can to maintain Zionist interests. And people have asked about, like, what about the Gulf connection? You had Assad meeting with MBZ of the UAE. They had a phone call. They discussed the latest developments in Syria and a number of regional issues. MBZ stands with Assad. During the call, MBZ affirmed his country's support for the Syrian state and its fight against terrorism and the establishment of its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and stability. So this is relevant because the Madkhalis claim that I'm an Assadist. Meanwhile, MBZ, their lord, has been calling Assad, and it's a problem for them for Assad to be deposed. And already Rabbi Faris is calling the Syrian rebels Khawarij. They're terrorists. They're Khawarij. So if I'm doing taqiyya, what about these people? What about the Madkhalis? The Madkhalis were doing taqiyya this whole time. They're actually secretly pro-Alawi, pro-Assad. And their sheikh has also said that you can't make takfir of him. Interesting how all of that fits together. So these people, that's the difference between me and these Madkhalis, these sectarians. They're constantly changing their tune as it suits the situation. Whereas, as I've established, I've been consistent, shockingly consistent. I surprised myself with my own consistency. When I go back and read these posts and these tweets from 2015, I'm shocked. I'd forgotten that I'm calling out sectarianism back in 2015. I'm shocked by the level of consistency that I've had. But these other opponents that are criticizing me and takfiring me, they can't keep their story straight. That's the difference. I hope you can appreciate that. If you don't believe me, go to the tweets. It's all there. It's all public. So this is a very interesting clip, an interview from Piers Morgan, and I want you guys to listen to it.
I don't know.
So this is General Wesley Clark, and he was in the Bush administration. And he's a hardcore Zionist.
He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, we're going to war with Iraq. Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do.
So right after 9/11, Bush administration, we've decided to go invade Iraq. Why? We don't know. They weren't all briefed, I guess. And he's at the top. It's a 4-star general at the top, General Wesley Clark. And why are we invading Iraq? No clue. Saddam didn't hit the Twin Towers, so what's the deal?
So I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
General Clark, aside from the fact...
So 7 countries, they had the plan for this right after September 11th. And he lists the countries. These are the countries that we're going to take out. Look at the history. Look at what has happened since 9/11, the past 23 years. It's like they were following the plan that they've outlined 20 years ago, 23 years ago. They're following it to the letter. So then Piers Morgan is talking to General Wesley Clark here. Let me just...
that you have aged extremely well since that clip, given we're 22 years later, so congratulations on your gene pool. When you hear yourself talking then, I mean, you sound almost incredulous about what you were learning there. What do you feel about it?
Actually, you know when it started, Piers, is 1991. I went in to see Undersecretary Wolfowitz in May of '91. He told me, I said, you got to be proud of how the troops have done in the Gulf War, right? He said, yeah, but President Bush said they're going to get rid of Saddam. He said, I don't think that's going to happen. He said, but we've got maybe 5 to 10 years to get rid of all these old Soviet surrogate countries, governments like Iraq and Syria and Libya and so forth before the next great superpower comes along. I said, 5 to 10 years, we're going to attack them? And he said, well, and I said, who's the next superpower? Is it China? He said, well, and then he sort of faded off like it's a Friday afternoon. I don't want to think about it anymore. But they actually put together a plan. They took it apparently to Brent Scowcroft, who was George H. Bush's national security advisor. And General Scowcroft said, let's hold on this until after the election. The election didn't work out for them. They left. I came into the Pentagon in the spring of '94. They said, what's the national security strategy? I said, I don't know, but what about the stuff that Wolfowitz was proposing? Nobody'd ever heard of it. It got resurrected in a study that was paid for by the Israelis, Richard Pearl. And that's the study that said that if you want to protect Israel and you want Israel to succeed and have peace negotiations work, then you've got to get rid of the states that are surrounding on the periphery that are preventing Yasser Arafat from making an agreement. And so this led to all that followed.
There you go, straight from the horse's mouth. Wesley Clark. Wesley Clark is not a supporter of Palestinians or of Muslims. As far as I can tell, maybe something has changed. He's getting old. Maybe he's seen the light. But as far as I know, Wesley Clark is not some kind of supporter of Muslims or Palestinians. And he says very clearly that this is all Israel's plot. They, in order to secure their interests and gain regional dominance, want to ensure that all of these surrounding countries are destroyed and all of these regimes are toppled and pro-Israel regimes are installed. How we do that? Sometimes it's by direct military invasion. Sometimes it's through economic sanctions. Sometimes it's through coups. Sometimes it's through bribing. This is the way that they had planned it from the 90s. From the 90s. And then after 2001, 9/11, then this is revived.
So I'm not that far off. It's just that, you know, right now, I don't know for sure exactly whether the Sunni terrorists that comprise HTS have changed their spots. I don't really see I don't know their independence from Turkey. My guess would be that that President Erdogan helped them, maneuvered them around. He certainly was the first national leader to speak out on their behalf. I suspect that Turkey told Russia, don't worry about your bases there. We'll protect them. You can stay. But you remember when this first started, Russia was bombing. And then they stopped. And that's when the state-to-state discussions began. And I think there was a sort of agreement on this. Russia would like to get its troops back so it can handle Ukraine anyway. It was just a little embarrassing for Russia, but they'd like to get their troops back, and they'd like to keep their bases. And Turkey would like to have greater influence in the region, and especially to work against the Kurds. And to do that, this is a sort of roundabout way to do it. And then they're sort of gambling that they can control the devils that they're working with in there. I don't know how this is going to work out, and I don't know what assistance the United States is going to provide, because we're working with the Syria Democratic Forces and the Kurds up there in the northeast, and that's probably not going to be a smooth relationship, at least initially.
Point that Scott made, which is it's almost beyond parody that the United States is ending up now sending support to somebody who was Al-Qaeda's representative. I mean, there is a perversity.
He's referring to HTS. He's referring to Jolani.
To that, isn't it? I mean, Al-Qaeda, responsible for one of the worst terror attacks on American mainland in history, the worst, in fact. And now they're supporting the guy who was one of the key members of that organization.
Well, it's not like It's always difficult. Look, there is Shia terrorism and there's Sunni terrorism. The Shia terrorism is normally state organized. The Sunni terrorism is normally not state organized. It's independent of that. And so the United States has been working on a state-to-state basis. It's tried to restore the government in Iraq. It's going to try to help a government emerge in Syria. But underneath this, the United States, of course, has to be concerned about terrorism. And, it just remains to be seen. It's the $64,000 question at this point is, who are these people?
Yeah.
Who are they listening to? Did they really change their spots?
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's move on.
Yeah, everyone has this question. Everyone has this question. Even the U.S. is wondering. So it's unclear. And they're sending mixed signals. That's the scary part of it.
On to why I got you guys back together, because I found last week's debate about Ukraine fascinating. There have been developments since then. Both Donald Trump and President Zelensky, they've both come out now with statements, Scott, about, it looks to me like Trump is desperate to do a deal. He infers that Russia will want to do a deal because of the casualty rate on the battlefield in Ukraine, which is so bad for the Russians now. They're recruiting North Korean troops to come and join them because they simply can't get the manpower. And the reports that up to 2,000 Russians a day are being killed, which is staggering. You also have Zelensky, for the first time in the last week, clearly signaling that he is prepared to do a peace deal and inferring that as part of that, he accepts that Ukraine will have to cede some territory. So where do you think we're going to be with Ukraine, first of all, in the next 6 months?
Well, I'm really not sure. I definitely am very pleased to hear Donald Trump insist that we have to have a negotiated solution. All due respect to the general, when we were on last week, Cenk Younger asked, but General, what if Ukraine can't? And General Clark simply dismissed the premise of the question and said, nope, it's the Russians who must be made to fail. But the thing of it is that's really not based in reality. That's like saying, well, the Taliban just can't be allowed to win, or Ho Chi Minh just can't be allowed to win. They're going to win. And the question is how bad it's going to be. As everyone has agreed, including Biden, we're not sending the 82nd Airborne in there or the U.S. Navy to reverse Russian gains on the ground. There's no way we're willing to risk that.
All right. I thought this segment was all going to be about Syria, but they got into Ukraine towards the end of the clip. But the point is that there's this plan all along, and General Wesley Clark is admitting that this is coming from Israel. It's for securing Israel's interests. So it's completely irrational not to factor in the Yinon plan, not to factor in what Israel is doing, will do. It's completely delusional. And for the rebels at HTS and Jolani, literally, I want to see if you guys have seen anything where he calls out Israel, calls out the U.S. support for Israel in genociding Palestinians, calling out what's happening in Gaza, calling out what's happening in the West Bank. Has he said anything? Has he made any indication that he is going to be opposed to the influence of the U.S. and Israel in the region? Has he said anything like that? So the fact that he has not, as far as I can tell, there's one clip that has been going around, but I can't tell if it's a accurate clip because it might have been cut out of context. But it's a clip of Jolani saying that our priority is Iran, and we don't want to make an enemy out of Israel. That's a shocking thing to say. That's a shocking thing to say, because even if you, and then people will strawman me and say, oh, Daniel expects the rebels, they are freshly finished with their deposition of Assad and taking over Syria, and they should immediately go to Jerusalem. That's what Daniel expects. I'm not saying, I don't have that expectation. It makes sense for HTS and the new government in Syria to be very cautious, to be very measured when it comes to Israel. That's just intelligent. That's smart. But at the very least, you can make some lip service. You can actually say, no, we oppose Israel. Even the biggest simps for Israel in the Middle East have done that. Even Saudi, even the UAE have made statements condemning the assault on Gaza. But these guys are not even willing to do that, or they haven't done that. And meanwhile, as we'll see, Israel has encroached deep into Syrian territory and have bombed over 300 bombings in 48 hours. And you still are not willing to say that the US and Israel are a menace and a danger, and we're not going to ally with people that are bombing us? That's shocking. That's shocking. They're not even willing to, so far, after a week and a half, to make a single statement against Israel and what Israel is doing in Gaza. That's bad enough, but they're not even talking about the invasion of their own territory, of Syria. This is a huge red flag. And none of these rebel fanboys who are telling us, oh, we have to view these mujahideen. The mujahideen are going to bring glory to Islam. They're going to go and establish the Sunni caliphate in the Middle East single-handedly, like this kind of euphoric exaggeration. And if you don't get on board the train, then you're an Assadist. Those people have been awfully quiet about what's going on in Syria right now with Israel. They've been awfully quiet, and this is coming back to reality. This is coming back to reality. Why? Because in the same way that we all came back to reality 13 years ago with the Arab Spring. And again, I'm in favor of deposing these tyrants, but how do you depose the tyrant? That's the question. If ISIS comes and deposes a tyrant, is that a good thing? No. If a pro-Israel group comes and deposes a tyrant, is that a good thing? No. It's good that the tyrant has been deposed, especially one as criminal as Bashar al-Assad. But I'm not going to be celebrating as if it's a unqualified victory for Islam in the way that these people are celebrating. So either these people are just inexperienced, they're literally like teenagers who don't have any clue about recent history, or they're agents, or they're just really, really dumb. Those are the only three options. You can be happy about the deposition and the toppling of a tyrant, and you hope that he is brought to justice, while also being very realistic about what is the situation that now faces Syrians, all of these innocent Syrians who are at the mercy of another force, and that force is a big question mark. It's a big unknown. Being rational means that you wait and hold off on judgment, and you just look at what the evidence points to. And then you make a decision or a judgment based on evidence. Not this kind of blind taqiyya, or not taqiyya, taqleed. We're supposed to all do taqleed of HTS? Why? What justifies that? And I can never get an answer. I can never get an answer, especially when we look at the background of Jolani. So that's Wesley Clark and his talk on Piers Morgan. So let's look more about what Israel is doing. This is Le Monde. Syria at the center of Israel's strategy to prevent Hezbollah from rebuilding its arsenal. So Israel from the beginning was invested in the success of the rebels in terms of breaking up the axis of resistance. No one can deny that. No one can deny that. Does that automatically disqualify the rebels? No, I didn't claim that. Because it doesn't. Israel wants to position itself so it wins no matter what. So it's going to have support for Assad in the case that Assad is able to stop the rebellion, and it's going to support the rebels to a qualified degree in case the rebels win. That's the strategy that Israel always plays, to make sure that it is winning no matter the outcome. People are not understanding this. So Syria rebels appear to credit Israeli strikes on Hezbollah with aiding shock advance. So the Israelis are taking credit for the success of the rebels. Israeli tanks have entered the Syrian town of Quneitra near the occupied Golan from the demilitarized zone, accompanied by shelling of nearby areas. This follows increased IOF deployment in the Golan yesterday and the fall of Bashar al-Assad regime today. So while this is happening, Israel is advancing. Israel grabs land in Syria's Golan Heights, warns villagers to stay home. Israeli forces also bomb weapons depot in southern Syria and the capital Damascus, Israeli media reports. You have Israel now advancing to such an extent that they're within 20 kilometers of Damascus. That's how serious this situation is. This is what Israel is doing right now. And have we heard anything from Jolani? Have we heard anything from the rebels that we're supposed to view as the mujahideen who are going to establish Sharia and the glory of a Sunni caliphate? Like, are they the ones who look at what is, and this is my question, like, look at this map. 20 kilometers is nothing. Explain to me what is stopping Israel from just marching into Damascus right now. Damascus is even less defended than Gaza. Gaza, at least, has a tunnel system, has a resistance force that has prepared for decades to fight against the IDF. Damascus is even less defended and less prepared for an IDF invasion than Gaza. Isn't that shocking? Isn't that very troubling? Isn't that extremely troubling to anyone who cares about Syria or the Middle East? What is stopping? And you have Smotrich, you have the finance minister, and Ben-Gvir, the defense minister, saying, "Yeah, we want Damascus to be part of Israel." They've explicitly said it. So what's really stopping them? Like, and I've asked people, and there's no answer. There's no answer. The only way to stop the Israeli advance is to ally with who? Who are they going to ally with? I wonder. Are they going to ally with the U.S.? The U.S. is going to help them? Or is it going to be Iran and Hezbollah and Russia? Are they going to help stop Israel from advancing? What's the rational choice? What's the only choice? There is only one choice. And the problem with the sectarians and the Medkhalis and all of these fools is that they want to lie to you and prevent you from realizing the reality. Because if they admit it, then they admit that they lost the argument completely. My position has been consistent. Whoever is ruling Syria has to ally in a pan-Islamist alliance with other powers in the region. Ideally, Turkey. Turkey will play a major role. But unfortunately, Turkey is not willing to directly support HTS. Against Israel, at least. Why? Because it'll bring sanctions. Israel, going against Israel directly will bring sanctions. Because as we've seen, HTS is still considered a terror group. And that's why the U.S. is still not sure. Should we keep them on the terror group or not? And the whole question is, will HTS say anything against Israel or act against Israel? If they do, they're staying on the terror group. And that means that Turkey is not going to risk sanctions by supporting HTS and the rebels, at least not directly. So they're not going to get the weapons that they need to defend Damascus. So why wouldn't Israel take this opportunity to just roll on in Damascus? You end up cutting off southern Lebanon from Iran so that when they continue to break the ceasefire, they have a much better chance of eliminating Hezbollah. That's what Israel wants. That's why they're advancing along the border northward because the real target is Hezbollah. This is a very dangerous, bad situation, shockingly bad situation. And the mujahideen that we're supposed to all support and cheerlead and celebrate with, they're missing in action. So people are not wanting, the sectarians are not willing to acknowledge this reality. They're hoping that we don't notice it. But I've been consistent. My position is pan-Islamism, alliance, and that is the case no matter who's in charge of Syria. No matter who's in charge of Lebanon, for that matter. No matter who's in charge of Yemen, for that matter. If tomorrow the Houthis are displaced by a Sunni faction, my position is not defeated. I'm not proven wrong by that. Because whatever Sunni faction that is, they need to ally with other countries and other powers, including Iran. My position is consistent. This is what Israel wants to do. Can you see? They want to just balkanize Syria and cut it up and divide it. They want to return to this state that existed prior to the state of Israel. Just keep it divided, separate, have the Kurds in the north as a buffer with Turkey to keep Turkey occupied, then have a state of Damascus, to have a state for Druze, have a state for Alawis, just divide and conquer. Just have separate warring states constantly negotiating their borders, because as long as they're doing that, we can take as much as we want. We can control as much as we want. We can move in Israeli settlers as much as we want. That's the plan. Israel strikes in Syria. Target weaponry it fears could be acquired by hostile forces. So 300 strikes over the past 48 hours, destroying the Navy, the Air Force, the Air Defense Network, the missile arsenal, military research and development facilities, command centers. They've also invaded southern Syria with tanks advancing up to 20 kilometers from Damascus. This is what Israel is doing with no opposition. And then these morons are saying, oh, this proves that Assad was actually helping Israel. This shows that Israel is opposed to HTS. And HTS are the true mujahideen. This is proof. No, you idiot. No, you moron. Israel is just taking the opportunity to cripple Syria and make sure that there's no capabilities to oppose Israel. They would have done the same thing with Assad. The only thing is you have Russia and Iran who will retaliate. Just like Iran retaliated with Operation True Promise 1 and 2. Now that Iran is being kicked out of Syria and Russia has been all but kicked out of Syria, then now is the time, because we don't have to worry as much about retaliation. Iran is not going to come and support HTS, because HTS is declaring war on Iran, according to some reports. So the fact that Israel is bombing Syria and neutering Syria and its ability to do anything militarily, that doesn't prove anything. That doesn't prove anything. It only proves that exactly what I've been saying, that Israel wants all these Muslim nations to be completely demilitarized, to have enough weapons where they can kill each other, for Syrians to kill each other. So make sure that the Syrians have enough AKs, make sure the Syrians have enough, light munitions and grenades and whatever, mines, landmines, make sure they have enough of that, but nothing that can actually threaten Israel. So no long-range weapons, no missiles, no cruise missile, nothing. No air defense. We want Syria to be like Gaza. That's what we want. So that we can just do whatever we want, as long as we want with Syria. If Syria gets out of line, more bombing, more economic sanctions, more terror groups being sent into the country. That's what we want, without any kind of opposition. this is a very stark and scary future for Syria that Israel is drawing up with the help of the US. So this is the state spokesperson, the White House spokesperson making this statement. Let's listen. Because he's being asked about Israel has gone across the Golan Heights. The UN has said it's a violation. Does the US agree? So let's listen to this.
Israel has said that, you know, since the first time since the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War has openly gone across the Golan Heights and said it's creating what it calls a temporary buffer zone. How do you?
Sorry, the volume is just slow. I can't raise the volume anymore. But he's asking about the invasion.
So that's a violation. Does the United States agree? First of all, does the U.S. agree that it's a violation?
So let me say a few things about it. Number one, I think it's important to put in context what happened that led up to this event. First of all, the Syrian army abandoned its positions in the area around the negotiated Israeli-Syrian buffer zone, which potentially creates a vacuum that could have been filled by terrorist organizations that would threaten the state of Israel and would threaten civilians inside Israel. Every country has the right to take action against terrorist organizations, and every country, I think, would be worried about a possible vacuum that could be filled by terrorist organizations on its border, especially in volatile times, as we obviously are in right now in Syria.
So this is the Israel and the U.S. always use this as an excuse to invade countries in the Middle East. That's why they've invaded Afghanistan. Because they said that, well, Afghanistan did not attack us in 9/11. It wasn't the Taliban. It wasn't Afghanistan. But Afghanistan is harboring Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is being harbored by Afghanistan. Therefore, we have to invade because they're harboring terrorists. Same thing with Saddam. Same thing. This is always their excuse. This is always the reasoning that they give.
The second thing that is important is that Israel has said that these actions are temporary to defend its borders. These are not permanent actions. And so
false. They've already claimed that what they've taken over is theirs permanently. Netanyahu has already claimed it.
Ultimately, what we want to see is lasting stability between Israel and Israel and Syria. And that means we support all sides upholding the 1974 disengagement agreement.
Do you feel that they're holding up that disengagement agreement?
Well, look, this is a temporary action that they have taken in response to actions by the Syrian military to withdraw from that area. Now, what we want to see ultimately is that agreement fully upheld, and we will watch to see that Israel does that. They have said that this is a temporary action, and we're going to be watching what steps they take in the coming weeks.
You're saying watching what steps they'll take. I mean, do you want them to take
So, of
those
course,
steps?
we will be engaging with them as well. But ultimately, it's important that there is security along that border. Right now, there was potentially a vacuum created by the withdrawal of Syrian forces. We don't want to see a vacuum there either that could be filled by terrorist organizations. That's not good for, not just for Israel's security, it wouldn't be helpful potentially to the people of Syria. If you see a terrorist group move into the area that was vacated by Syrian forces, and it could lead to an outbreak of hostilities across that border, something that we don't want to see either.
I mean, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you're saying basically that the U.S. wants this Israeli move to be temporary, that you don't want a permanent.
So look, as I said, we want to see the 1974 disengagement agreement upheld, and that includes the terms of the buffer zones, which includes Israel withdrawing to its previous position.
Yeah, so we'll see if that actually happens. Spoiler alert, it won't. Spoiler, the Israelis are saying, finders, keepers, it's ours now, tough, and don't tempt us to go further. In fact, we are planning, just you wait. Biden says U.S. will support Syria and its neighbors after Assad dynasty collapses. So this is what they're waiting for. Like, yeah, we're going to, as long as these rebels are going to accept our influence and accept Israel, everything is going to be A-okay. This is them filling the vacuum and preventing terrorism. We're going to work. We're going to work with these rebels. But that's the thing. All sides are saying this. Iran has also said this. Iran, Russia has said this. The Houthis have said this. that we're going to work with the rebel forces. We're going to work with the new leadership in Syria. And it's really a waiting game. What is the new government going to do? Who are they going to ally with? Netanyahu claims credit for starting historic process that led to the fall of Assad regime. IDF takes control of buffer zone along the border, including Syrian side of Mount Hermon. Said to bomb missile research facilities and chemical weapon stores around Damascus. This is an interesting interview. A top Syria expert explains Washington's next move. Syrian President Assad's downfall could be an opportunity for Donald Trump. So how does Donald Trump play into all this? So they're interviewing a Middle East expert, okay, probably a Zionist. So this is a question asked the expert. But the leading rebel group that just took Damascus, HTS, is a radical Islamist group, and its leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, once fought with al-Qaeda in Iraq against the Americans, though he's since broken with the extremists publicly. So is it accurate to say they're not going to be an enemy of the U.S.? And this is the answer. Well, that's what obviously the United States is going to determine. Jolani has made it very clear that there's no place for extremism in Syria. He said he wants to be friends with everybody. And Syria's only enemies are Iran and Hezbollah and Assad. So he's clearly saying all the right things. And yes, the U.S. can say, I don't believe you, which it will do for some time, and it'll try to keep all this for leverage and to just justify sanctions on him and his government to try to prevent it from rebuilding and to keep it poor. But if Jolani doesn't declare war on Washington and says that he's trying to build a government and feed people so that they can come home and refugees can return, the U.S. is going to look bad if it doesn't come to terms with that. And Jolani has already been reaching out to the American government, from what I've heard from people in Washington. And so they're going to have to engage with him and take the measure of him and his new government. But they're going to have to act rather swiftly on this because the entire Arab world and larger world is going to want to give this new government the benefit of the doubt. That's what I'm doing, giving them the benefit of the doubt. But these are bad signs. These are bad signs that you're not coming out and denouncing the U.S. and Israel for what they're doing to Palestinians and what they have done to Syria. You're not denouncing that, and it's clear why. You are playing this game where you want U.S. support. You want to build relations with the United States. This is a very bad sign, and this is why it's dangerous for Biden to say that they'll support Syria. Why would he say that? Why would he say that? Because it's an open possibility. They haven't, the new government hasn't signaled anything to make the U.S. feel that, oh, they're not going to play ball. At least not yet. So are you starting to see that maybe this unqualified enthusiasm for HTS is not justified? Fine, give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm just pointing out that these are serious red flags. So is he not, though, still on the U.S. terrorist list? I think there's a big price on his head. It's $10 million. There is a big price on his head, and there are many people in Washington who are working to get him off the terrorist list. The Washington Institute for Near East Policy has a number of people who have been arguing quite vociferously that Washington should take another look at him, and he's moderated and that he's done many good things. So as we'll see, Jolani has been associated with ISIS. He's been associated with al-Qaeda. And he was considered a terrorist with a $10 million bounty on his head. And associated with many atrocities committed against civilians. But now, we're considering taking him off of the terror list. And the Washington Institute, the Zionist Institute, arguing, no, we should reconsider whether he's a terrorist. And Biden is saying that we're going to support. And people are saying, Washington officials are saying that this is an opportunity for Donald Trump. So what's going on here? You tell me. Meanwhile, the geniuses that we have in Muslim dawah, the geniuses like Ibn Hussein, this brilliant mind, saying, Salafis have brought victory to Syria. The Salafis, notice how he doesn't say Sunnis because, obviously, you don't believe that if an Ash'ari is a proper Sunni, they're not Ahlul Sunnah, they're deviants. If you're Ash'ari or Maturidi, and you might even be kafir, you might be even a kafir if you do something like tawassul, or you believe in tawassul or istighatha, then actually you're a mushrik kafir, and we denounce you, and we do takfir of you. The Salafis, the Salafis have brought victory to Syria. That is a fact. The books of the Salaf will be taught from now on. That is another fact. So from Sunni Lebanon to Sunni Iraq, our people, the Salafis, will seize the opportunity, inshallah. Prepare yourselves. Like, this is the level of sectarian brain rot. And people like, you know, Jake Dodgetella, saying things like, if you're not Salafi, and not only you have to be Salafi, but you also have to the proper understanding of the sifat of Allah according to Ibn Taymiyyah's philosophy of language. If you consider yourself Salafi, but you're not fully on board with everything Ibn Taymiyyah says about the sifat of Allah, you're actually a deviant outside of Ahlul Sunnah. Did you know that? You're not even a Sunni, you're a deviant. Like Daniel. So this is a Salafi victory. This is a Salafi victory. Not even all Salafis necessarily qualify. This is sectarian brain rot. This is what, you know, we have to deal with and what we have to enjoy. Meanwhile, Israel and the U.S., they're like carving up our nations. They're carving up our lands. They're carving up the Muslim world, the Ummah, plotting 10 years, 50 years down the line. And we can't even agree. We can't even like get past that. What's your Aqidah, bro? What's your Aqidah, bro? This is... Oh, the Salafis. Yes, the Salafis are all going to get together and repel Israel. And they're going to repel, and they're going to repel everything, right? And if you don't believe that, you're a pessimist, and you don't have the hope in Allah and the Nasr of Allah. Like this is like their cope. You can't even get help from Turkey, by the way. You can't get help from Turkey. The Turkish Erdogan is not a Salafi. Did you know that? So you can't really get help from him. You have to, any country that potentially you can ally with, first you have to do an Aqidah test. You have to quiz them on what they believe about istighatha and tawassul. What do they think about the Mawlid? And then also, what do they think it means for Allah to be above his throne? What does that mean? What does Yadullah mean? First, you give them an Aqidah quiz, and then you decide, are you Salafi or not? And appropriate for a alliance. If not, sorry, we're gonna invade you. Actually, we're not gonna fight Israel. We're gonna invade you to correct your Aqidah. We have to all correct our. Everyone has to have the correct Aqidah. Everyone has to have the correct belief on Sifat of Allah, on Yadullah and Istawa ala al-Arsh. Everyone has to have the correct Aqidah according to the philosophy of Ibn Taymiyyah only. Not even if you're Hanbali, non-Taymiyyah Hanbali, even that is deviant. Okay, everyone, that's our only concern. Otherwise, there's no use in fighting against invasions and genocides and ethnic cleansing and complete destruction. There's no use in fighting that. Focus on Aqidah. The brilliant mind of Ibn Hussein, this clown, this loser. Then look at this. So I announced that I have a show tomorrow. Cope-a-thon of epic proportions, says Mr. Potato Head. Was I wrong in my analysis? LOL. The most narcissistic account is acting like he's entertaining the idea he could ever be wrong. Even though he was on literally everything in Syria, Iraq, and Iran, Danielle will somehow still be right. Yeah, we pretty much saw who was right and who was wrong. But we're just getting started. So then look at what he says. He's mocking me. In keeping with the Yinon plan, the Jews, trademark, made up fake stories about Shia, blah, blah, blah. So this is how serious Talha is, Mr. Potato Head. It's just a joke. Yinon plan. Oh, Daniel mentioning the Yinon plan and blaming the Jews. Wow. That's what all Daniel knows. because obviously this is not relevant. It's not a threat. We've won. We defeated the Shia in Syria, so it's already a complete victory. Now it's not enough. We have to go to Iraq. HTS has to go and invade Iraq and invade Lebanon and invade Iran. That's literally what they say. That's literally what Mr. Potato Head and Ibn Hussein and these morons, these idiots, that's their big brain move. They haven't even mentioned what is happening in the southern part of Syria. They haven't even seriously talked about it. Their main focus has been, oh, we have to go after the Shia. And if you mention Israel, oh, you're obsessed with the Jews. You're an anti-Semite who's obsessed with the Jews. That's what Zionists have been saying. And this Mr. Potato Head is pretty well aligned with Zionists, strangely. Maybe it's because he wants to get on their news programs and interview with them so he can advocate for more bombing of Muslim countries. But alhamdulillah, I think his career is over. Failed journalist, but yeah, so but then look, this is the smoking gun. This is the clip that really says it all. So I don't know, some loser podcast that he's on. Listen to what he says.
Israeli encroachment into Western Syria.
So the Israeli encroachment is into Qunaytara, and
Yes.
you know, in 1973, they took a similar route, basically to drive in towards Damascus, and that was checked by the Iraqi army, who quickly deployed within 24 hours' notice. Basically, drove across the Syrian desert and slammed into the Israeli flank, pushing them back from Damascus. Which, when you see the shambles of the Assadist army.
Yeah, the Iraqi army, by the way, at that time was a combination of Shia and Sunni. Guess you didn't have to didn't mention that, huh?
You'll understand why it took the Iraqi armed forces to hold the Israelis back all the way back then, decades ago. So what Israel is doing now is to basically, they're using the excuse of a buffer zone, or to make sure that, there's no spillover into their border. But it's a serious security threat. And I think it will be perceived as such by everyone pretty much in Syria, aside from probably the Kurdish factions, particularly the SDF. And that's because they've not only had a long-standing relationship with Israel, but Israel has very recently, through its, what's he called? I think the foreign minister, Katz, was it called? Katz? Maybe I'm mistaking him for the president. But that government's changed so many times in recent years that I keep forgetting who's who in the cabinet. But they recently released a statement saying that, we need to basically intervene in Syria on the side of the Kurds. The idea being, obviously, that if they intervene on the side of the Kurds, then they can keep any forces within Syria from consolidating their power and rule and stabilizing the country. It's not in Israel's interests for Syria to stabilize. Obviously, that's going to...
Oh, wow. Who says that all the time? Is that the Yinon plan that you were just mocking? It's not in Israel's interest for Syria to be stable? Who has been saying that? Huh? Well, you were just mocking just today or just yesterday as the Jews. Oh, you're obsessed with the Jews, Mr. Potato Head.
to be understood by those who are the rebel factions. And it will be a point of priority for them to begin to organize some kind of national government that can negotiate some kind of deal with the Russians, the Americans, and also resolve this Kurdish issue in the northeast.
Oh, wow. So that's what the rebels should do. Oh, thank you, Mr. Potato Head. The threat of Israel is serious. Oh, thank you. Wow. That's really great analysis. But I thought that was the Jews' trademark. Remember? That was the Jews. But now you're saying, oh, it's a serious threat. Okay. So what should the new government do? They should form a national government, and they should seriously consider negotiating with who? The U.S. and Russia? Okay. So allying with the U.S., which means allying with Israel, you think that the U.S. has any different policy than Israel? We just heard the White House spokesperson, and we know that Trump's White House is full of hardcore neocons, pro-Israel neocons. So, the new government should ally and work with the U.S., number one, and then Russia? Oh, don't you care about all the atrocities that Russia has committed, Mr. Potato Head? Aren't you worried about the crimes Russia has committed, that they'll commit more crimes in the future against the Syrians? Why are you advocating negotiations with the US and Russians? Isn't that strange for you to advocate for alliance? I thought the Sunnis can just stand on their own. The rebels can stand on their own. They don't need anyone's help. But now, oh, you've changed your tune. You've changed your tune so conveniently. No. The Syrians need to negotiate with the US and Russia. Not Iran, not the Shia. Not the Shia, not Iraq, not with Hezbollah. You know, the people who actually have opposed Iran, not the actual axis of resistance. No, don't work with them. Don't negotiate with them, because they're Shia, they're Majus. But the U.S., yeah, of course, the U.S. work with the U.S. Negotiate. Notice the words he's using: negotiate. You know, try to work with a deal with the U.S. Maybe the U.S. will say something mean to Israel, like, "Oh, Israel, you really need to get out of Damascus." 20 miles or 20 kilometers outside of Damascus. Just have a negotiate. And Russia, just negotiate with Russia. Do you see this idiot? Do you see this moron? And the thing is, he's not just a moron. He's dishonest. And this is kind of the smoking gun, that this person is an agent. Like, this person is an agent. All of his media appearances are all about bombing Muslim countries. For Israel, basically. It's just a coincidence that Talha's foreign policy outlook perfectly matches with Israel's. It's just a random coincidence, right? And he's telling the new Syrian government, yeah, negotiate with the US. Work with the US, work with Russia. So if he truly has a problem with Iran because of what Iran has done to Syrians, and how Iran has supported Assad to commit these atrocities, then why doesn't his critique also expand or extend to Russia? Russia was also a key part of these atrocities. But he'll accuse me of spitting on Syrian graves, and he'll accuse me of being a crypto Shi'i doing taqiyya. Meanwhile, he's telling the Syrian government to bootlick Putin, to bootlick and support Putin, negotiate and have relations with Putin. That's really consistent, right, guys? So these liars claim that I've changed my position. I have waffled. Go to the debate that we had, and I say we need alliance with Muslims. He says, no, we can't have any alliance. I asked him explicitly. So Muslims should all just be divided on their own. There can't be an alliance because, oh, it's the Shia, and oh, they have committed crimes. I said, all of these countries have committed crimes. All of these countries, including Shia, including Sunni, they've all committed crimes and atrocities. So therefore, we shouldn't have any alliance with anyone? He says he was trapped. So he said, yeah, we shouldn't have any alliance. But now his tune has changed very conveniently. And who is the person that he wants to negotiate with? Who is the country that he wants to ally with and negotiate with? USA? Russia? So you sectarians need to find a smarter champion, because this guy has like double-digit, like room temperature IQ. And he keeps giving us these gems. He keeps giving us these wonderful gems of, yeah, the new Syrian government, get on the phone. You know, Jolani, yalla, get on the phone, call Washington, make a deal. Make a deal. This situation with Israel, it's I admit it's not good. Get on the phone, Jolani. Call Biden, call Trump, tell them you're willing to negotiate. Negotiating with US? Assad is a butcher. Khamenei is a butcher. But the US, they're angels. The U.S., they're masum, right? They're sinless. Negotiate with the U.S. That's allowed. You can overlook a long history of crimes committed by the United States against the Muslim world for decades. You can overlook that. He has to overlook that because if you remember from the debate, he maintains the moronic position that the biggest threat to Muslims around the world is Iran and Shia, as opposed to Israel and the U.S. And I completely debunked that moronic nonsense. He had no response. So of course he's okay with negotiating with the U.S. U.S. hasn't done anything. The U.S. hasn't committed crimes or atrocities. It's not like the U.S. committed the atrocity of murdering 1 million Iraqis. He claims to be Iraqi. Who knows what his background actually is? Maybe it's Tel Aviv, actually. But the U.S. murdered 1 million of your Iraqi family, extended family. Your people were murdered by the United States. 1 million. And millions more were turned into refugees. But you're now advocating for negotiating with the U.S. Yes, let's reach across the aisle. Jolani, please reach across the aisle. You can work something out with the United States and Russia. Man, I'm just vindicated constantly. I'm just right constantly, subhanAllah. And, if I make a mistake, I'll admit it. I'll admit making a mistake, but I don't see the mistake in this analysis. I just see some flip-flopping and waffling from a bunch of sectarian losers, former ISIS supporters. That's all I see. So that's the problem with these people. And this rat is such a disgusting rat. I announced that my mom had passed away, and he says, "Oh, did she convert to Islam?" This is what this disgusting rat has to say. Even others who are, hate my guts had the decency either to stay silent or to say, "May Allah have mercy on your mother. We have our disagreements, but I'm not going to attack your mother." But this rat tweets saying, was your mom a Muslim? SubhanAllah. I mean, he doesn't consider me a Muslim. He's done takfir of me, and here he is simping and shilling for Israel. Because if you're talking about an alliance between Syria and the U.S., that means an alliance with Syria and Israel. That's what it means. So here, you want to see the announcing my mom passed away. A lot of brothers very kindly making dua, which I really appreciate, obviously. And then what does this guy say? Sounds like she converted to Islam before her death, ? Yeah, so such a disgusting person. Like, I think he has just mental problems. Like, what would inspire you, or what would derange you into thinking that this is something to say, like, against me? But these people have no principles. Like, especially this guy, he has no principles. He has called my mother a whore. He has said I'm a illegitimate bastard child. Like, this is the kind of qatf that he does. He's called Ibn Majhul, like, your father. That's qatf. Like, you're basically accusing people of being bastards. This is something completely haram in Islam, and it comes with actual shari'i had punishment in the Quran from Surah Nur, and we've covered this before. So he has no shame insulting my sister in the debate. Remember, he brings up my sister to score points in the debate, who is my sister who's passed away. So we don't put it past such a disgusting, filthy person to insult my mom passing away. But yeah, I mean, everyone has seen his colors, and I mean, that clip is now on the record. He wants the new Syrian government to ally with with the US and Russia. So even the Houthis are saying that, are condemning the Israeli strikes on Syria. And the Houthis, who are Zaydi Shia, have said they're willing to work with Syria. But the Syrian rebels themselves have not said anything about these strikes from Israel. Is that a red flag? Let's see. Iran readies huge surprise for Israel after Assad's ouster, alliance with rebel group HTS. So even Iran is saying that we will potentially ally with the new Syrian government. Even Iran is willing to ally. Everyone is willing to ally with these rebels, except the rebels have not said anything other than indicating that they may ally with the United States. And then you have like such flip-flopping. Like, check this out. So, hold on. So this is from back in January, because I've been advocating for transcending sectarianism, Sunnis allying with Shia against the bigger threat. And then this brother, who I respect this brother, he says, a Sunni military alliance with Iran? Think again. Iran was more eager to topple the Taliban and Saddam than U.S., so they assisted U.S. by various means in the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. Listen from Iran's President Khatami, his own words. So alliance with Iran? Out of the question. Meanwhile, this brother reports on the Taliban and Afghanistan and supports that. Meanwhile, the Taliban has all kinds of alliances with Iran, economic and diplomatic relations with Iran. He doesn't comment on that. He doesn't, acknowledge that. But we can never ally with Iran. It's impossible. But now, what does he say? Now, what does this brother Abu Ahmed say? Hezbollah, this is from December 10th, yesterday. Hezbollah will have a supply line from Iran if they only focus on fighting Israel, and Iran allows a supply line from Afghanistan to Syria. That should be the deal. Plus, Iran will supply weapons to HTS. Iran should supply weapons to the Syrian government. Really? But I thought there's no alliance allowed with the Shia. If U.S. don't remove HTS from terrorism list, Turkey won't support them with any weapons as they'll come under sanctions. So only Iran can help as their sanctions proof. So now Iran can come and help. Now we can have an alliance. But you said that there's no alliance. There's no alliance with Iran. No military alliance with Iran. Out of the question. Think again, Haqiqatjou, like he's calling me out. Think again, Haqiqatjou. But now, please send weapons. Please send weapons to HTS. Yeah, that's the thing. In the abstract, you can be ideological. You can pump your pride and beat your chest and say, us Sunnis, we're going to stand up and conquer. We don't need anyone. Like, it's easy. When you don't have power and you don't have any kind of influence, it's easy to be on Twitter and be like an ideological warrior, a purist. You can be an absolute purist when it's online. But when it's the actual practical situation, and now you're in a position of power and influence as these HTS rebels find themselves, then you have to make a deal. You have to be pragmatic. You have to form agreements. You have to negotiate, as Potato Head so eloquently put it. You have to reach across the aisle. No longer can you be a purist. No longer can you take these ideological stances and say, we are Sunni, Salafi, and we don't need anyone. Okay, I'll prove it. Prove it. As soon as they come into power, it's not even days. It's not a week hasn't passed, and already you're talking. Maybe Iran can facilitate weapons to the new government. Weren't you saying that there's no alliance with the Shia? There's no especially with Iran. Especially with Iran. So these people are not serious. That's the problem. This is not you when you say something online, or you go and do a live stream, or you go into a debate, you have to be thinking about all contingencies. You have to expand your consideration to all kinds of possibilities. Today, Assad is in power. Tomorrow, it might be a Sunni group. The day after, it might be another group. You have to consider all possibilities and then take a position based on principles. Take a position based on principles, because that will be consistent over time, no matter the contingencies that come about because of historical events, like a lightning speed takeover of Syria by the rebels and deposing and toppling Assad. If you only limit your considerations to the present circumstance and the variances within that circumstance only, and you don't consider other possibilities, then you're constantly going to have to shift and change and do a 180-degree turn. You constantly have to waffle and amend, and you will be called out as inconsistent and unprincipled. For them to say, as I've been debating for months now, over a year, that we need a pan-Islamic bloc of Muslim countries, a united ummah that puts the interests of Islam and the ummah first. And that means regional powers, Iran, Turkey, Egypt, the Gulf countries, Saudi, UAE, Qatar, all coming together with the entire Muslim ummah coming together for a pan-Islamic bloc. That is what Islam calls for. So I'm never going to be proven wrong, because that would mean proving Islam wrong. What I'm calling for is what Islam calls for. Pan-Islamism, Muslims together united. That's never going to be proven wrong. And that's based on the Quran and Sunnah and the Islamic tradition. And I've given countless proofs. And I've debated it. I've gone on a 2 versus 1 debate to defend it. Go and see that record. That's never going to be proven wrong. And in fact, I've been 100% vindicated. 100% vindicated. HTS, the new Syrian government, has to make a choice. Who are they going to ally with? They don't have the option of not allying with anyone, because they're too militarily weak, especially now that Israel has occupied and bombed all of their military resources. They have no choice but to ally. The question is, who are they going to ally with? It's obvious. It's obvious. It's only morons who say, oh, the US and Russia, like the US and Russia are friends now. Like the US and Russia are going to allow for Syria. Like you can meet both of Russia and the US's interests in Syria. They're completely geopolitically opposed, especially in Syria. Especially because Syria is the conduit to the Mediterranean for Russia, or that region. Like Russia has very specific geopolitical interests for Syria. The last person that Russia will want to be at the negotiating table with is the US. Only a complete moron would sit there with a serious face and pretend like, oh, I have a PhD. And say, oh, the Syrian government should negotiate with the US and Russia. Get them on the phone. So, I mean, I wish I had like smarter opponents. Like I wish, there was actual competent people. So on the one side you have these morons, on the other side you have like Jackson Hinkle. And act like legitimate Assadists who, I don't know what they're thinking. They're still talking all kinds of nonsense. So, I mean, the solution, let's talk about now the final segment of the show, which is why were these rebels so successful? And who is Jolani? And should we be trusting him 100% as these sectarians are demanding? But first, I want to look at some super chats and what you guys have to say. I've ranted quite a lot. Madkhalis, if you support Assad or HTS, you're Khawarij. Khawarij, also Madkhalis, silent on MBS, CC, Jordanian kings, killing Muslims, etc. Thank you for your super chat. I mean, they have so many contradictions. You can't even keep up. Except for Sunni Muslims, everyone else sees what's going on in Syria. I guess it's pure tribalism. It's easy to manipulate Muslims using divide and rule. I'm Sunni Muslim, and I see what's going on very clearly. So you have a bunch of Shia, actually, who are still supporting Assad and still like coping. Like, these guys are just coping. And that's the thing. Like, those are the sectarians. There are sectarians on both sides. May Allah deal with that Kelb Talha for his reply on your Twitter post. He's a male, not a man. Ameen. Yeah, really disgusting person. Thoughts on pro-Palestinians like Ryan Dawson? I don't follow Ryan Dawson. Like, he's had dumb takes a lot. But I'm sure I've retweeted him at some point. Oh, Daniel retweeted. That means he supports everything this Dawson says. Yeah, so I'm sure he said he has pro-Palestinian positions. He's criticizing the Israeli lobby. That's great. But if he's supporting Assad, then he's an idiot. And if he downplays the atrocities of Assad, then he is morally compromised. How can you support Palestinians, but you don't support the Syrians that have been slaughtered and tortured and ethnically cleansed by Assad and his regime? That's a huge inconsistency. Muhammad, thank you for your super chat. This is a disaster for greater Syria and Palestine in particular, now greater Israel. Yeah, it does look bleak, but inshallah, I have hope. You know, the hope is that the new government is going to speak out against Israel and create an alliance with the other Muslim powers. That's the solution. Sheikh Imran Hussein predicted all this 20 years ago. So I'm not confused, because once you know the big game, have you talked with Imran? No, I haven't talked to Imran. Is Imran going to talk about how the Quran has been distorted and how the Quran has been edited? So I don't talk to that deviant. If you are happy on the same day as Biden and Netanyahu, then you should ask yourself why. Search the General Wesley Clark list. It's not necessarily a knockdown case that, oh, they're happy on the same day as Biden and Netanyahu. That means they're compromised. You have to look deeper. And those are the considerations that I made. I said in the initial post that you saw, I said, look, put aside this question of whether the rebels are doing or are aligned with the interests of Israel and the U.S. for now. The important thing is that we need to get rid of Assad. And then we have to wait and see, and they have to prove that they are going to stand for the Ummah. And then, and only then, do we support them. But if they want to be in this kind of middle position where they are in both camps and they don't want to do anything against Israel, they don't want to do anything to prevent the genocide of Palestinians, then we don't support them, or we have a qualified support. You know, maybe they are doing good for Syria, but I'm not going to view them as this amazing force for the Middle East and for the Ummah. I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. It'd be irrational to do so, because there it's just for their own benefit, not opposing Zionist genocide. That's called basic rationality. I don't know why it's so difficult for people to understand this. Thank you for your super chat, brother. At this time, it's so vital to stay united. We have seen this playbook before. We cannot allow ourselves to get duped this time. Ya Rab, help us. Yeah, exactly. We've seen the playbook before. That's what's so surprising. It's not new. It's not new. How can you ignore everything that's happened over the past 10 years or 20 years, let alone earlier in the 20th century? Thank you, Cian Marie. Sorry about your mom. Shame on those HTS traders. Are HTS the traders, or are you talking about traders to HTS? Anyway, I appreciate your kind words about my mom. Okay, let's go to the final part of the episode. So what really was happening in Syria? Why did these rebels have so much success? It's shocking. It surprised everyone. They just rolled right on through from north to south, just taking city after city, and the Syrian army stood down and didn't really fight back. And Russia also stopped attacking. Iran really didn't have any presence. So there's an article that has been published, and it had some good insights. Not this. A Syrian source told Al Jumhuriyah that Assad's fate was sealed on December 7th in Doha during Astana meetings with Arab partners. During the meeting, Russia and Iran informed Ankara, meaning Turkey, of their readiness to facilitate a political transition in Syria. So Iran and Russia said, we are done with Assad. The basic principle for this process were then outlined in coordination with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, and Qatar, covering 7 key points. Number 1, an orderly and smooth transition of power. Number 2, securing diplomatic institutions and their safety, including holy shrines as requested by Iran. Preserving state institutions. Preventing reprisals and civil conflict. Securing chemical and strategic weapons. Safeguarding Russian military bases. Commitment to Resolution 2254 for the political transition process, according to the UN. So Iran doesn't want civil war. Iran doesn't want to say, oh, we're going to preserve Assad. We're going to preserve a Shia force in Syria at all costs, even if that means slaughtering thousands of Sunnis. We're going to make sure that we maintain power in Syria, no matter the cost to Sunni lives. Iran didn't say that. Iran is saying orderly, smooth transition of power to Sunnis. Not only to Sunnis, Sunni Salafis, who are, and someone who has been associated and affiliated with ISIS, the biggest enemies of Iran. So this is interesting. Why would Iran do that? If Iran is purely sectarian and Iran purely just wants to kill Sunnis no matter what, why would they want a smooth transition of power? Why would they want to preserve diplomatic institutions and their safety? Why would they want to preserve state institutions? Why would they want to avoid civil conflict and civil war? Why would they want to avoid, or why would they want to secure chemical and strategic weapons? Those weapons are going to be in the hands of these Salafis. And the answer is clear. You want to continue to have an axis of resistance against Israeli aggression. Iran is acting very rationally to preserve its greater interests, of course. But its greater interests are preserved with avoiding sectarianism, maintaining weapons that can be used to defend and protect the Muslims against Zionist aggression. That's the kind of alliance that is needed for the good of everyone. To advocate sectarianism or negotiating with the U.S. is suicide. That's not what Iran wants. That's not what any of these countries want, because look at all the countries involved. Ankara relayed these terms to the rebels' military operations room, which agreed. They agreed to this under the following conditions. Bashar al-Assad must leave Syria immediately. The current prime minister must issue a statement announcing the handover of power. The army leadership must inform its officers that the regime has fallen. So then Moscow briefed Assad on the agreement, while UN envoy Geir Pedersen was informed and issued a joint statement with participating countries. Al Jumhuriya corroborated this with another well-informed source in Doha who was aware of the proceedings of the expanded meeting. And so when is this? December 9th. Okay. Look very carefully at this. Astana agreements, and look at what MuslimSkeptic published. What did MuslimSkeptic publish on a week ago? On December 4th. What is the solution for Syria? What is the date on that? December 4th, right? And then December 9th, 5 days later. And what did we say on December 4th? Remove Assad. Avoid sectarian war. Avoid civil strife. And the role of outside powers. The ideal solution would be the following. Turkey, Iran, Russia, and China come to a deal. Turkey commits to expanding its power in the Middle East and backs a new Syrian government, which reflects the Sunni majority. Iran and Russia agree to this arrangement, abandon Assad, and force him from power. In return, the new Syrian government forms an alliance with Iran and Russia. In addition to Turkey, Iran and Russia are given guarantees that Syria will not ally with the U.S. against them. Iran is also given a guarantee that it can supply Hezbollah in Lebanon. Russia, aided by Turkey and Iran, arms the new Syrian state, which joins Turkey, Iran, and Hezbollah in opposing Israel and the U.S. and aiding Palestine. Meanwhile, China is brought in as a fourth ally with a long-term economic plan to rebuild Syria and develop it with the eventual aim of integrating it into BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative. Unless a solution of this type can be negotiated between countries like Turkey, Iran, Russia, and China, Syria will become a pawn of Israel and the U.S. Basically what Potato Head wants. They will destroy the country through unending sectarian war. Basically what Potato Head wants. They will also seek to spread that war throughout the Middle East. Oh, so are you now convinced that MuslimSkeptic is doing the correct geopolitical analysis? This is December 4th. And then what do all these countries agree to? Exactly those terms that we're mentioning. Does that mean that these countries are reading MuslimSkeptic? Or does it just mean we understand what is actually happening? We actually understand, our research team, me and the research team understand what is actually happening in the world, in the Middle East. You decide. You decide. Maybe they did. Maybe you have these officials who are reading MuslimSkeptic. Allahu Alam. But it's when you look at this, the agreements that are made, it's following our points point for point. Orderly transition of power. Remove Assad. Remove him. That's number one. That was also the number one thing that the Syrian rebels have said they wanted. And this is what Iran has agreed to. Safeguarding the military power. Expanded involvement of Turkey. So this is, anyway. It's all there, folks. It's all there. Don't believe me. Go and read it. And then there's reports from the Financial Times. Iran has lost faith in Assad before his ousting. So there are problems. There were problems. Iran was not necessarily upset that Assad has been displaced. Like, Assad is incompetent. Assad is a liability. There are reports that Assad is leaking information to the Israelis. Assad is leaking information to the Gulf, and that's how information about Iran is going to, and the axis of resistance is going to Israel, is through Assad. He's a liability. He's going to get removed. He's going to get toppled. Okay. There's no need for us to fight back and to try to preserve him in power. So this is not really consistent with the claim that Iran is just involved in Syria because of sectarianism. First of all, Assad is Alawi, and Shia consider Alawi to be non-Muslims. first of all. So it's not even the same sect. It's not even the same religion as far as Iran is concerned. That's number one. Number two, the Syrian army is mostly Sunni. It's majority Sunni. And I've pointed this out many times. There is this article also that you can read. Amwaj published it. Inside Story, Hezbollah, Iran, and the Downfall of Assad. This was published... When was it published? December 9th. So we published much earlier, 5 days earlier. But here's the summary. It's an analysis of what is going on inside Syria. The sudden downfall of Assad has raised a number of questions about the thinking and roles of his supporters. First and foremost, Russia played a pivotal role as events unfolded. According to one high-ranking regional diplomatic source, Assad's recent visit to Moscow was a turning point. So that's before the conquest of Aleppo by the rebels. He was in Russia. While the Syrian leader was in Russia, forces led by the Sunni Islamist HTS unexpectedly seized Aleppo without a fight. Upon his return to Syria, Assad is said to have expressed anger towards his army, describing it as unreliable collection of thieves. The senior regional source suggested that Russia's support was limited to ensuring a safe exit. This promise has apparently been kept, at least for now. Then there is the role of Iran. As an armed rebellion took shape amid Arab Spring protests, the Islamic Republic dispatched its expeditionary Quds force to save its Syrian partner with blood and great treasure. But Western sanctions gradually hollowed out the Syrian state, which turned to large-scale drug trafficking to generate revenue. It became apparent that only petrodollars and political pressure on Western capitals from the Gulf states would enable it a semblance of reconstruction. Iran thus welcomed the pioneering decisions by the Emiratis to reopen their embassy in Damascus in late 2018. Assad also gradually re-engaged with others who had backed the rebellion against his rule, including Saudi. But things took a turn following October 7th, Palestinian surprise attack on Israel. The Emiratis reportedly sought to prod Assad into standing on the sidelines. Barely a week later, the diplomatic mission of Yemen's Ansar Allah movement in Damascus was shuttered, ostensibly as a precondition for Assad's recroachment with Saudi. Meanwhile, as Israel frontally assaulted the Iranian presence and killed the leader of Hezbollah, the Syrian government largely kept mum. Great allies, right? While Syria's geography and official state ideology made it central to the Iran-led axis of resistance, Assad was apparently leveraging non-resistance to rehabilitate his standing among Arab allies of the U.S. So when HTS rolled into Aleppo and Hama without a fight, Iran was in no rush to come to Assad's aid. If direct access was to be physically constrained by Israeli air power, mindful of repeated bombings of runways in both Aleppo and Damascus, as well as threats against Iranian flights in recent weeks, it ultimately diminished the value of Syria as an ally to Iran. In this context, the Quds force is said to have established contact with HTS, securing assurances about the security of Shiite shrines and the Iranian embassy. So it seems like no one was really invested in keeping Assad in power. So that explains why. So to think that, oh, these rebels, they fought, they're battle tested, and they are shown their grit, their true grit in toppling Assad. No, not really. They haven't proved anything. They haven't proved anything. In fact, they were a marginal group. And you see other commentators like Bilal Abdul Karim, who has reported on Syria for a decade. And even he has his questions and has his doubts about HTS. He's positive. He's optimistic. But Jolani is a question mark and has very questionable background. Very questionable background. And why should HTS be seen as the saviors when there are around 27, 28 other Sunni groups who have also been a part of this? So... yeah, Iran and Russia moved on, and they're now hoping that they can form an agreement with the Syrian new government. Okie dokie. So Jolani, let's hear a little bit from him. Who is he? Let me share that screen. So it's weird that you get this immediate interview with CNN, and CNN just is letting you talk and make your talking points basically unopposed. So again, I'm not saying that this is proof that he is an agent, but it's interesting. Like, it shows that he's willing to play ball with the U.S. maybe, and the U.S. is willing to play ball with him. That's not a good sign.
Able to do this now.
Okay, so how were you able to do this now? Take over Syria? How?
This now.
In recent years, there has been a unification of internal opinions and the establishment of institutional structures within the liberated areas of Syria. This institutionalization included the restructuring within military factions. They entered unified training camps and developed a sense of discipline. This discipline allowed them, with God's guidance, to engage in a battle in an organized manner. The progress and execution of plans have been swift, with clear communication and adherence to commands. They stop where they should stop and withdraw where they should withdraw. The revolution has transitioned from chaos and randomness to a state of order, both in civil and institutional matters and in military operations.
Able to do.
So his explanation, this is Jolani explaining, yeah, we were able to accomplish this because we got good. We got good. We got our ranks together. Now the soldiers are actually following orders. The rebels, tell them to stop, they'll stop. You tell them to go, they'll go. So that's his explanation. No acknowledgement that there were other forces at play. Turkey is also at play. Erdogan is also at play. That's not something disputable. No mention of the fact that, well, maybe Assad is just incompetent. Maybe that there was internal decay, infighting that caused this. But whatever. It's natural for a military leader to attribute success to Allah and also to being good. Like, we're just good. We just got together. Just played hard. There's no I in team. Like, that's his answer. So what about Islamic governance?
In the past, you have talked about strict Islamic rule. Is that still the plan?
People who fear Islamic governance either have seen incorrect implementations of it or do not understand it properly. We are talking about something that aligns with the traditions and nature of the region. The most important thing is to build institutions. We are not talking about rule by individuals or personal whims. It's about institutional governance. Syria deserves a governing system that is institutional, not one where a single ruler makes arbitrary decisions.
Many Syrians are happy and will be happy to see the end of the Assad regime, but they're also worried about what HTS rule would mean, including minorities.
No one has the right to erase another group. These sects have coexisted in this region for hundreds of years, and no one has the right to eliminate them. There must be a legal framework that protects and ensures the rights of all, not a system that serves only one sect, as Assad's regime has done.
That's a good sign. He says no more sectarianism. So what do the sectarians have to say to that? Don't you take this as a betrayal? When he sits down in front of CNN, he says, oh, we don't believe in sectarianism. These sects have lived here for hundreds of years. We have no right to erase them. They deserve their rights. Is this a betrayal of your Sunni supremacism in the sense that you have advocated for eliminating Shia, eliminating the influence and the presence of Shia, bombing their masajid? This is what you've been advocating and you've been celebrating. So has Jolani betrayed your sectarian energy?
Syrians are happy and will be happy to see the end of...
To erase another group. years, and no one legal framework that.
That's the same.
You know, listening to you speaking, you've gone through quite the transformation. Once an Al-Qaeda leader, your group has had affiliations with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS, and now you are projecting this image of a moderate leader and a moderate group. What is HTS right now?
Hayat
Tahrir al-Sham is one of the factions in the region, just like all the others. Now we're talking about a larger project. We're talking about building Syria. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is merely one detail of this dialogue, and it may dissolve at any time. It's not an end in itself, but a means to perform a task confronting this regime. Once that task is complete, it will transition to a state of governance, institutions, and so on. I believe that everyone in life goes through phases and experiences, and these experiences naturally increase a person's awareness. A person in their 20s will have a different personality than someone in their 30s or 40s, and certainly someone in their 50s.
So are those days behind you?
So his answer to being affiliated with Al-Qaeda and ISIS is, oh, that was a phase. that was just an old phase. But like, I'll be clear, like, I'm not saying that that previous affiliation disqualifies him and he should be seen as a agent. I'm not making that claim. That's what Assadists are claiming. And they're saying, oh, this is ISIS and ISIS has taken over Syria. I'm not claiming that. I think that, yeah, we'll see what happens. But you don't just explain it away like, oh, it's just a phase. That's not very compelling response.
Sometimes it's essential to adjust to reality, and because someone who rigidly clings to certain ideas and principles without flexibility cannot effectively lead societies or navigate complex conflicts like the one happening in Syria.
People listening to this are going to wonder why they should believe you. You are still a specially designated global terrorist by the United States with a $10 million bounty on your head. Your group is a prescribed terrorist organization by the United States, by the UN, by the EU, and others.
I say to people, don't judge by words, but by actions.
Good
I
advice.
believe the reality speaks for itself. These classifications are primarily political and at the same time wrong. I define a terrorist as someone who intentionally kills civilians, harms innocents, or displaces people. If we're being honest, many of the wars waged by major powers in Arab, Muslim, and even non-Muslim countries have involved the deliberate killing of thousands, the destruction of homes, and the displacement of millions. Even the regime itself is guilty of such actions.
But the US and others would say is that you were parts of groups that did exactly that.
Personally, I have not done these things. The situation must be understood in its historical context. There was a massive war in Iraq that deeply stirred people's emotions, prompting many to go there. The circumstances of that war led people to various places, and my path led me to one of those locations. Given my level of awareness and my young age at the time, my actions evolved to where I am today. I didn't go to Iraq with those intentions. I went to defend the Iraqi people. When I returned to Syria, I didn't want to bring what happened in Iraq into Syria. That's why there were disagreements between us and ISIS.
So this is acknowledgement of his background. The question mark is that we know that these groups like AQ and ISIS have been infiltrated by intelligence agencies, Western intelligence agencies. And so the fact that he was closely involved, eventually he opposed them, but he was involved with them. And arguably, you know, there are still some connections there. This is a question mark. This is a question mark. So actions will prove. Time will tell. What is he going to do? And pointing this out doesn't mean that you're an Assadist. Pointing this out doesn't mean that you oppose the toppling of Assad or that you support Assad torturing and murdering hundreds of thousands of Sunnis. So the US is trying to play its cards. Russia is trying to play its cards. Iran is trying to play its cards. The Gulf countries are trying to play their cards. But what is going to be the most beneficial to Muslims? It has to be an alliance, but an alliance with who? I've been 100% consistent for years, decade now. And I think it's the answer is very obvious. It can't be any more obvious. And the danger, what we are facing with the destruction of any kind of military response to the genocide of Palestinians. So this is a disaster. It has a potential to be an ever worsening disaster. And I don't see others seriously engaging with that issue, with that threat. These are not serious people. These are not serious people that you see arguing with me. They're just a bunch of sectarians. They're a bunch of sectarians and potential agents and bots and medkhalis and Zionists. Like, those are the people that are all in my replies. So if you see the truth, if you understand, if you want to be principled, get in there, get in on social media, get on Twitter, reply to these trolls, reply to these potato heads, these idiots, reply to these medkhalis. Even if you don't agree with me on other issues. Just be consistent. Okay, so that is, I believe, everything that I wanted to present. Let me just look at my notes. In the meantime, if you have a super chat, put it in there. And I'm going to be looking at the chat in just a second. Yeah. So in the ultimate analysis, should we trust Jolani? Should we trust the new government? Time will tell. There are serious red flags. If they don't say anything about Israel being 20 kilometers from Damascus, that is a huge red flag. It is a red flag. And time will tell, like, what is their approach going to be? Who are they going to ally with? In the ideal case, it's Turkey, and Turkey takes a more aggressive stance against the Zionist threat. Unfortunately, I think many of you agree, Turkey hasn't done enough. Turkey has not done enough, but time will tell. Time will tell. I support pan-Islamism. I want all the Muslim countries to be united to preserve Muslim life. It's pretty simple. And Islamic interests and the interests of the Ummah. That's what Islam calls us to. That's what the Quran and Sunnah calls us to. And I've debated it. I've argued it over and over and over again. Okay. Now I'm looking at the chat, so feel free to put your comments. So here's a comment worth addressing. I still disagree. We can cooperate with Iran on certain missions in future, but not an alliance. This is just semantics. If you're cooperating, that means an alliance. I prefer us to be one entity, and Shia one entity. Cooperation can be done to a certain level. Yeah, that's all I'm advocating for. I'm not saying that we dissolve a difference between Shia and Sunni. I never call for that. Sunnis are Sunnis. We're Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and Shia are a different sect, and they have deviant beliefs. That's always been my position. There is a distinction, but that doesn't mean we can't cooperate, that we can't ally, that we can't work together, that we can't care about each other's interests, because we're Muslims. We're ultimately all Muslims, and this is what Islam requires and what the Quran requires. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. That's what Allah says in the Quran. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah all together. Daniel thinking we're not defending him in the replies, but Potato blocked everyone, not our fault. Okay, sorry. Thank you for defending me. But even if you don't, if he's blocked you, you can still post under my tweets and call him out and point out that he's lying, or him or any of these people, these bots. Just point out the lie. Just screenshot. I have so many tweets on Assad. So anytime someone says I'm an Assadist, you just post a screenshot. I obviously can't, I'm not always on Twitter looking at all their replies. The thing is, especially the past 2 weeks, or actually more than 2 weeks, the past 2 months, I've been with the situation with my mom, taking care of my mom, so I haven't been as active. But inshallah, you guys can pick up the slack. There is no red flag. It's a green flag because they're smart. HTS is smart. Everyone knows how they feel or want. How is it not a red flag that you're not defending Palestinians against Israel by words only? I'm only talking about words. I'm not saying that I expect Jolani to go and invade Israel and start, just words, just say something in defense of Palestinians. That's too much to ask. Even the Gulf states have done it, and we know where their interests lie. So that it's the biggest red flag possible. And the people who are constantly saying, "Oh, Iran is just a paper tiger. Iran hasn't killed a single Israeli. Iran is just words." Well, Iran actually has words. Where are the words from these rebels? It is a red flag. So, and I hope I'm proven wrong. I really hope that I'm proven wrong and they do come out and make a stance that they're not going to ally with the US. That was part of the agreement that they made with Iran, Russia, Turkey, Saudi, Qatar. That was part of the discussion that happened at that conference in Qatar, in Doha. So, but they haven't followed through. That was 3 days ago. United in haqq, not deviants like the Shia. Okay, do you not like the word united? You prefer the word alliance, or do you prefer the word negotiations? Is it a problem with semantics? Because you're fine, all you people are fine with negotiating with Turkey, with Russia, with the United States. You're fine with all of those kinds of negotiations and cooperations and ceasefires and all those kinds of deals. That's alliance, that's cooperation, that's working together. You can do that with kuffar, with non-Muslims, but you can't do it with the Shia. You're not consistent. Do you not see the inconsistency? This is a joke. Dawson acknowledges the evil of Assad, but he also knows the Zionist plans. He's pretty much like you on this matter, very similar. Maybe, I don't know. I don't follow him closely enough to know. Daniel, there is no ethnic cleansing in Syria. The majority of the population in Damascus are Sunni Muslims, and Assad's wife is a Sunni. Many Assad's army are Sunni. Yeah, that's true. I'm not sure what his wife is, but it's true that his army is majority Sunni. That's why I will dispute that it's a sectarian war. The civil war in Syria has been sectarian. But it is ethnic cleansing in the sense of slaughter. And it's indisputable that Assad has slaughtered over 400,000 Syrians. 400,000. The total death toll is 600,000. But 200,000 is attributed to the rebel forces, and 400,000 is attributed to the Syrian army that has killed 400,000. Mainly Sunnis. And yes, Sunnis are the majority of the army, so it's Sunnis killing Sunnis. But it's Assad who's responsible for that. And Iran is also responsible, and Hezbollah is also responsible. And that's why I've consistently said that the Shia influence, where you're propping up Assad to murder and slaughter Sunnis, this is unacceptable. And he has to be toppled. It's always been my stance. But this kind of nonsense. Oh, there's no killing in Syria. Syria has been like this paradise of peace and cooperation under Assad. Like, are you joking? Like, this is beyond conspiracy theory. This is delusional. Like, you're living in La La Land. This has been documented by countless, the deaths and atrocities, and it's indisputable. It's like disputing that the sky is blue. Israel airstrikes, demilitarize Syria. This coordination equals treachery. Syria needs to be able to defend itself. Yeah, who is really the traitor? Do I think Israel played a part in Assad's fall? Yeah. I mean, I mentioned their role earlier in the stream. Daniel, come back to Shia before it's too late. No, thank you. No, thank you. You come to Sunnism. You become a Sunni. I invite you. And inshallah, you want the reasoning. I was Shia, and then I just read some books. I read books and realized where the truth lies. So the other thing that people have said is that, oh, what Syrians have done, these rebels, is exactly like the Taliban. This is like just a repeat of Afghanistan. That's why we have to celebrate. This is not really a serious analysis. There's a big difference between the Taliban and HTS. The Taliban was ruling Afghanistan for a long time, and they were taken out because of U.S. Invasion and war crimes and terrorism. And then they have had a triumphant return to power. And that was amazing, beautiful, and miraculous to see them arise or reemerge after the atrocities that had been committed against them. HTS didn't have that history. We don't know the history of HTS. We don't know what their ideology really is. It seems like they're shifting. Jolani says he's going through phases. Whereas the Taliban has been consistent over time. Whether you agree with them or you don't agree with them, you can't accuse them of being inconsistent. And by the way, the Taliban does have diplomatic and economic relations with Iran. When are these sectarians going to admit that? The pro-Afghanistan sectarians, when are they going to admit that? One ummah from Senegal to Indonesia. Ameen. You say Jolani has red flags. Well, he does. Does Iran also not have red flags? They literally aided Bashar and are still defending him. First of all, no, they're not aiding Bashar. Bashar is gone. The army is gone. So how are they aiding something that's non-existent? I read you the agreements that they had with the rebel force involving Russia. Decisions made in Qatar on earlier than December 9th. So I don't understand what that comment is referring to. Does Iran have red flags? Yes. Does Iran have red flags? Yes. Okay. This is what people don't understand. You have to look at all alliances as being provisional, conditional, cautious, all alliances, but then you have to be flexible enough to make those alliances in a way that actually serves your interests. And in the interest in this case is the interest of Muslims, of Syrians, of the Ummah, of Islam. You have to be flexible enough to ally even with non-Muslims. This is allowed in Islam, and it's exemplified by the Prophet ﷺ when he had sulh and he had agreements made with the Quraysh, with the Mushrikeen in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, for example, and other cases as well, even with the Yahud, with the Constitution of Medina, etc., etc., etc. You are flexible enough, Islam allows, for you to ally not only with deviant groups, but with outright non-Muslims. But it's always conditional. It's conditional on the interests of the Ummah being met and not being forced to violating the rights of Allah. Those are the, to put it in a nutshell, the conditions for any kind of alliance. But it's always provisional. It's always conditional. It's always cautious. And you should always be able, once the terms of the agreements have been violated, to end the alliance. So yes, there are precautions, there is question marks, there are red flags when it comes to Iran. But the interests of the Ummah is that despite them being a deviant sect, we ally with them for the purpose of saving Muslim lives against a devastating threat, existential threat. If the red flags that are coming from Jolani is allying with that existential threat, allying with the existential threat, or being at best being neutral with the existential threat. And then you have these moron sectarians saying, oh, we should negotiate with the US and Russia. So that's the bigger red flag. That's something that is really unacceptable. If Iran started saying that, no, actually, we should just ally with Israel, then I would be the first to denounce them. I'd be the first to say that, you're the enemy. You're the enemy. You're betraying the Palestinian people who are being slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands. So, of course, any ally, and this is the basics of foreign policy and geopolitics, it's provisional, it's conditional, and it has to be approached with caution because you can always get stabbed in the back and no longer are your interests going to align. But unfortunately, you have Muslims who have this black and white mindset that, oh, you're either the Sahaba and you're either these angels and either you are the Ma'soom, Mujahideen that we put our heart and soul into you and your group, or you're Dajjal and you are the enemy, you are Shaitan, and we are forever going to be at war with you. Only those two options. And this is why mentally they struggle. Okay, is HTS like the Sahaba or are they like Shaitan? Iran. Okay, Iran cannot be like the Sahaba, so they must be Shaitan. This is the way, like any kind of Christian group. The Christians, clearly the Christians, they believe in the Trinity, like they're mushrikeen. So therefore we have to treat them like our enemies at all times, in all conditions, like we treat the mushrikeen, Shaitan, whatever. Dajjal, whatever. That's not the way, that's not what Islam teaches. Islam teaches that there is a spectrum. And at any point, a certain group might be aligned with Muslim or Islamic interests, and therefore it's permissible to cooperate. You cooperate and then to serve those greater interests, but it's provisional, it's conditional, and it has to be approached with caution. And you can't violate Islam. Can Iran and HTS patch up their differences? That seems to be the case with what Iran wants. We'll see what HTS says. Yeah, Jolani basically said that he is willing to work with Iran and have strategic relations with Iran. Like that was part of the CNN interview. Never unite with Shia Kafirs. Just unite with United States and Israel. Just unite with them. How do you expect the average Syrian man to cooperate with Iran after all the butchering? Well, tell Jolani. Jolani said he's willing to consider strategic relations. So how do you... Is Jolani Syrian? is Jolani a Syrian? I wonder. Is he a Sunni Syrian Salafi? Yet he said that he's willing to have strategic relations with Iran. How can he overlook the crimes? You people are unbelievable. Like you people are, but like one of your sectarian goons can say, "Yeah, we should negotiate with Iran. I mean, with Russia and U.S." You won't raise a eyebrow. You won't even blink. He just goes and says that with a straight face. But then you come to my chat. How do you expect the Syrians to ally with Shia Kuffar? You guys are a joke. Like, it's impossible. Like, they just spam the same nonsense. Like, they just spam it constantly. Like, again, it's an IQ problem. I'm afraid it's an IQ problem. Never gonna get through to these people. I already addressed some of these comments early in the stream. There's just way too many comments in the chat to address all of them. Where is the comment? Hope Syria returns to its former glory and its people can get a good night's sleep without having to worry about getting kidnapped or killed. I mean, like, we can all agree on that. Yeah, okay. I think I addressed most of the super chats. So, last chance for the chat. And then I'm going to call it a day. I covered a lot, but some of the things need to be analyzed in more depth, and we need to go and we also have limited information. We don't know what this new government is going to do. And that's the ultimate message that I hope I've conveyed to you in this stream, is that we have to wait and see. That was the first thing I said when they sieged Aleppo. Wait and see. And they need to prove where their allegiances lie. My allegiance is always going to be with Palestinians. First and foremost, because they're the test. The Palestinians are the test. Whoever is supporting them with real support, I'm with them. Whoever is opposing them, I'm against them. That's a very simple standard. And that is the standard of the Palestinian resistance. And that's the thing that is always missed when I'm being attacked and being called a Majusi, a secret Shia doing taqiyya. They will use all of these slanderous labels on me, but they won't apply it to the Palestinian resistance, even though I have the exact same position as the Palestinian resistance, who has always wanted an axis of cooperation and pan-Islamism to protect Palestine against genocide. That's always been the Palestinian resistance position. That's what I support. These sectarians are against the Palestinian interest, but they pretend like, oh, we're Sunni. We are so pure in our Sunnism. We're Ahl Sunnah, and Daniel is just a deviant secret Shia. They don't raise a peep against the Palestinians. Why? Because it shows that they are liars and hypocrites and cowards. They have the bravery to call me out. They won't call out the Palestinians. That is enough to prove that they are cowardly hypocrites. Go back to the debate. Go back to the debate where I debated those two clowns, 1 versus 2. They never could say anything against the Palestinian resistance, even though the Palestinian resistance wants alliance between Shia and Sunni across the Ummah. Okay, so don't try to paint me as an Assadist. Don't try to paint me as a pro HTS. I'm not pro HTS. I don't know what they're about. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not pro. I'm not against. I just want alliance. I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm pro-alliance for protecting Palestinians. That's the bottom line. Okay. So jazakumullah khairan for your attention in the chat, your comments. And I hope I've been very clear. I hope I've been clear and not concise. It's over 3 hours, but I hope I've been clear about my position. I hope I've given you more understanding of what this whole situation is about in Syria and what we can expect in the future. Make dua that Israel's plot is foiled and they are not going to take Damascus. They're not going to destroy Syria's economy. They're not going to create civil war to cause more Syrian death and suffering. Pray that that doesn't happen. You can celebrate the toppling of Assad without closing your eyes to these obvious threats, these existential threats that can plunge the entire Middle East and the Ummah into disaster. So we pray to Allah to first and foremost protect the Palestinians and to protect the rest of the Ummah and to keep us on the truth in these confusing times. May Allah protect all of us and keep us on the straight path. Ameen. And if you disagree with my geopolitical analysis, I have no problem with that. Just give me a reasonable alternative. Give me a reasonable, point out where I'm wrong and give evidence. Don't just rehash the same cliched statements that I've addressed 100 times. Okay, guys. And a final reminder, subscribe to the newsletter. The link is below in the description on MuslimSkeptic.com. Subscribe and subscribe to the channel. Leave me your comments. You agree, disagree, you support, you don't support. I want to hear from you. Just leave a comment below. Really appreciate you all tuning in, and I will catch you, inshallah, on the next Haqiqat show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.